Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 731, Stripping Away the Disguise. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Above the nine heavens, the night mist sea surged like crashing waves against a shore. Around Qin Ming's true form, the firmament distorted. Amidst terrifying tremors, the void itself seemed to be on the verge of collapse. With him at the center, the Tao resonance grew wildly turbulent, like a mountain sea bursting its dam, accompanied by the thunderous roar of a colossal tide. He was testing his techniques, researching how to efficiently slay enemies in this unique and harsh environment. The terrifyingly violent Tao resonance surged violently, far more ferocious than a raging, uncontrolled inferno of lightning and fire. In such a world, it was no wonder so many veteran cultivators suffered from grave ailments. Merely staying alive was a struggle, let alone engaging in life and death combat. Unless nourished by the Xuanhuan qi or the primordial qi, one had little choice but to lie low and avoid taking action whenever possible. The results are promising, Qin Ming murmured. The more he studied, the brighter his eyes shone, his entire being immersed in the research. Eventually, he began integrating various extraordinary techniques with the surges of Tao resonance. I wonder how far the beings deep within the night mist world, those who have long studied this domain and adapted their cultivation techniques, have advanced by now. After all, rumors said that a few anomalies, extraordinary individuals, could even use the vibrating Tao resonance to break through major cultivation bottlenecks. Qin Ming carefully sensed the fluctuations, even when the Tao resonance rose and fell with the violence of a tsunami, or crashed down like a torrent of lightning and fire, he was able to withstand the onslaught. Perhaps, in the future, no one will have a choice. We must learn to adapt. No matter how arduous it proves to be, we must find a way to coexist with it. Moments later, a brilliant, multicolored radiance emanated from him, illuminating the pitch-black night mist sea. Qin Ming began his breathing technique, drawing in otherworldly essence and gathering the essence of the nine heavens. Within his body, a process of the primordial chaos returning to one was underway, continuously refining heavenly light and the sacred demonic essence energies into primordial one qi. The Tao resonance in the night sky gradually stabilized, leaving behind only a magnificent and wondrous spectacle. As he regulated his breath, Qin Ming recalled some past events. After several years, certain artifacts could finally be retrieved from the old cloth. He unfurled the cloth and took out a small metal fragment. It appeared ordinary and dull, but the moment he infused it with a sliver of primordial chaos force, it erupted with a blinding brilliance, its sharp aura piercing through the night. It was a fragment of an axe blade. Though small, its origin was immense. However, at this moment, it was better suited to be used as a knife blade. Years ago, when Qin Ming had slain the Huang family's peerless prodigy, Huang Zayatong, his greatest prize had been this very blade. It was suspected to be a physical fragment of the inner vision heaven-cleaving axe. Whether it was a replica or the genuine article, its value was immeasurable. Qin Ming's eyes shone with anticipation. He hoped to resonate with it and unlock the complete secret technique of the heaven-cleaving axe. Back then, a dangerous consciousness had clung to the axe blade. Qin Ming had sealed it within the old cloth, figuring that a year or so would be enough to neutralize the threat. However, he had encountered an unexpected accident himself, remaining isolated from the world for over 4 years. As expected, that malevolent consciousness has dissipated, Qin Ming said, satisfied. He then added, it seems you're not completely useless after all, old cloth. The old cloth ignored his provocation. The next instant, Qin Ming's expression turned ecstatic. He had resonated with the axe blade and obtained the flawless inner vision heaven-cleaving axe's mysterious technique. There was no doubt about it, this was a supreme technique from the forbidden domain. Joy radiated from his eyes and brows, he had gained yet another powerful means of self-protection. There was one more similar artifact, the blood-colored Vajra ring. Qin Ming brought it out as well. As it emerged, crimson clouds swirled around it. The treasure, forged from Kun steel, flowed with a dreamlike radiance in the night sky. It was no fragmented artifact, but a flawless work of art. Unlike the supreme treasure of Tushita Palace, this one was not perfectly round, possessing a few sharp edges. Its Kun steel material was a rare find in the world, making it indestructible. Back then, it had been possessed by a residual spirit. At that time, Qin Ming had been quite wary of it. After all, it was a weapon forged by the Shui Xuandu organization. He examined it closely and said, there are no hidden dangers anymore. The Kun steel ring was as warm and smooth as red jade, fitting perfectly on his wrist. Upon its surface, besides the Tao patterns, there were also depictions of mountains, rivers, all things in nature, as well as flowers, birds, fish, and insects. Qinming stroked it with his hand. He had been anticipating this for a long time. Because it might contain the supreme mysterious techniques of Tushita Palace, possessing the power of transforming barbarians into Buddhas. Every time he saw Niu Wuwei perform such a supreme technique, he was filled with envy. Now, he might also possess it. Qinming immediately entered resonance, only exhaling a long breath of turbid air after a considerable amount of time. As expected, it contained the mysterious technique corresponding to the Vajra ring. However, the scriptural interpretation was extremely complex, involving many domains. The fundamental techniques of Tushita Palace were truly difficult to cultivate. Truly formidable. Qinming marveled endlessly. He had plenty of time and would study it slowly in the future. He desperately needed this legendary trump card. It would give him the confidence he needed. If I encounter experts from Tushita Palace, I can counter them with the longevity force and devouring force. If I run into members of those mysterious clans, I can unleash the power of transforming the barbarians into Buddhas. Qinming's face beamed with excitement. His years of anticipation had finally paid off. Now, by retrieving 2 artifacts, he had directly acquired 2 priceless supreme techniques. With the incomplete version of the Inner Vision Heaven Cleaving Axe as his foundation, he would naturally master this new technique much faster. As he cultivated, Qinming swung the axe blade. With a sharp shish, it tore through the night sky, causing a massive disturbance that made the Tao resonance itself tremble. Clang! Suddenly, the axe blade seemed to strike something. Qinming's expression shifted. He hadn't sensed anything earlier. How had he suddenly struck a hard object? He didn't dare be careless and immediately went on guard. Above the 9 heavens, besides the terrifying gale wind that could erase pure yang consciousness, strange and eerie things would sometimes materialize out of thin air. The area was fraught with danger, which was why he always acted with extreme caution. A finger bone. Qinming was astonished. It was a fragment of bone that had been blown over by the fierce gale wind. The finger bone was dull and had clearly existed for countless ages. Yet, after taking a direct hit from the Inner Vision Heaven Cleaving Axe, it had only developed a few cracks without shattering. Qinming immediately realized this was the bone of a top-tier being. It has lost its divinity, its Tao resonance is gone, and it reeks of decay. Yet, after enduring such a terrifying strike, it hasn't even shattered. Truly extraordinary. Qinming was shaken. He immediately initiated a resonance to probe its essence. Blurred scenes and fragmented voices surfaced upon the bone. Unfortunately, it wasn't a cultivation technique. Qinming focused his mind, sensing the bone with all his might. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. The ancient tomb of the Supreme Being suspended in the firmament. He had heard a fragment of an ancient, unsolved mystery. The gist was, the great tomb of a Supreme Being, suspended high in the firmament, had been desecrated by others, who then took the body away for a longevity experiment. Sadly, the remnants of the past were too shattered, and the lingering emotional fluctuations had been nearly erased, making it impossible to capture any more valuable information. Qinming's expression turned grave. The longevity calamity had existed since ancient times. Yet, in the present day, people were still conducting various experiments. In the process, they had created longevity legacies like Xuanhuan. Qinming's thoughts then turned to a recent event, the original form of that silver eye. If his guess was correct, that was the offspring of the Lord of Jade Capital. He had been a kind soul in life, as Old Cloth put it, a truly good child. Yet, even someone as powerful as him had his grave desecrated after his death, his uncorrupted corpse stolen. There were similar cases, like Xuanhuan of Tushita Palace. Could there be an organization, ancient and enduring, that has survived to this day, relentlessly researching immortality and sparing no effort to dig up the grand tombs of the most powerful cultivators? Qinming's previously light-hearted mood grew heavy. The night mist world was extremely dangerous. He couldn't help but sigh. Even the most powerful cultivators found no peace in death, their grand tombs torn open by others. I certainly don't want a day like that for myself. Qinming hurried toward Black White Mountain, intending to return to Twin Tree Village first. Xiao Qin, you're back. Has your condition improved? Yu Zhensheng's face lit up with joy as he saw Qinming's full head of black hair. Qinming forced a plausible explanation. I'm cultivating the black and white scripture, so my hair keeps changing between black and white. Brother Ming. Bai Meng shouted excitedly from a distance. They had finally reunited. Tang Yusheng stood gracefully, turning her head to offer a brilliant smile before her long legs carried her swiftly to the village entrance. Second brother, you really are a sly one. In the distance, the Dharma King's sworn brothers had stripped away his disguise, confirming that he was never Taiyi after all. This was, of course, Qin Ming's doing. He had no obligation to help conceal the truth. After all, Qin Ming was the victim here, the Dharma King had actually been impersonating him. Because of this, Zhou Tian and Niu Wuwei refused to call him second brother anymore. Second brother, you've got some nerve. You're from the same hometown as sixth brother, yet you kept us in the dark all this time. Thinking back to how Qian Cheng had feigned being a lost wanderer, pretending he didn't know the way back to Night Prefecture, the men all felt like punching him. Meng Jiu asked, so, should we call you Dharma King, Qian Cheng, or continue calling you Tai Yi? The past has all faded away. I would prefer you call me Qian Cheng. I have only inherited a portion of the Dharma King's innate wisdom. The identity of Tai Yi naturally reverted to Qin Ming. The group began to grill the Dharma King, feeling he had kept his true nature far too well hidden. He deflected the fire, saying, right now, I think we still need to interrogate sixth brother. His identity is still suspicious. How could he possibly escape from an eighth realm being? Exactly. The heavenly god vouches for me, and the Jade Capital has recognized me, Qin Ming said with a smile. He had no desire to get bogged down in pointless internal strife, trying to prove he was himself. Kaisha City was located in a remote area on the outskirts of Black White Mountain. Normally, it was rare for any figures of significance to appear here. But today, the city was teeming with experts, and auspicious light ascended into the sky. Ancestors from Night Prefecture, Earth immortals from the Outer Realm, and beings from the Heavenly Realm, one after another, they arrived. The sudden influx of such renowned figures caused a massive sensation. High-ranking officials from the ancient mountain peaks of the Heavenly Realm, Star Mountain, Thunder Marsh Palace, Sword Court, had all made their appearance. Of course, Qin Ming did not possess enough prestige to draw such a crowd. These people were primarily here to see the envoy of the Jade Capital and the young great sage. High above in the firmament, the Huang family's peerless earth immortal arrived in an imperial chariot. He was accompanied by numerous clansmen, including the clan's daughter, Huang Mingxuan. Previously, upon learning that Qin Ming was the figure known as Yi Jian, one sort Jing Jia Pai, the noblewoman of the Huang clan, had been filled with regret. However, upon learning that the direct successor of the Jade Capital had descended today, she felt she could move forward. She looked forward to witnessing the supreme grace of the young great sage. I never imagined the heavenly venerable would grace us with his presence, someone greeted with a smile. Hearing this, Lu Heng hastily waved his hand and said, do not mention the title of heavenly venerable again. With the Jade Capital's revival and the arrival of the envoy, how could I dare to claim such a title for myself? In the past, he had been publicly recognized as one of the strongest physical body cultivators above the nine heavens. With the envoy from the Jade Capital arriving today, anyone who dared to call him heavenly venerable would surely be trying to flatter him to death. Haha, brother Lu is too sensitive, someone teased. Lu Heng replied, cut the crap. Don't cause trouble. I heard the envoy has reached the peak of the seventh realm in the physical body cultivation domain. You old bones, don't dig a pit for me. He was accompanied by some of his clansmen, including the young heavenly venerable, Lu Zheng, and his younger sister, Lu Jingli. Ancient monsters gathered, all eager to establish a connection with the envoy. Many young experts also arrived, hoping to witness the great sage from the Jade Capital up close. I heard the envoy is here to announce Qin Ming's appointment as a hidden disciple of the Jade Capital. As for that great sage, he intends to have a face-to-face exchange with Qin Ming. Many people discussed this eagerly, speculating whether the so-called meeting would be a duel. Rumors had been spreading outside that Qin Ming had prematurely aged and might be crippled. Yet, the sheer scale of this event made one wonder if the white-haired Qin Ming was actually perfectly healthy after all. There's also a theory that the Jade Capital's higher-ups only appointed Qin Ming as a hidden disciple to show respect to heavenly god Lu Mo. If Qin Ming had truly been confirmed as a hidden disciple, there is no way he would have been cast aside. You have no idea what that status actually signifies. What is the story behind the hidden disciple? Many of Qin Ming's acquaintances from the younger generation had arrived, such as Zhou Tiandao, Yan Zuohua, Feng Zige, and Li Heng. The saints, led by Yun Jianyu, including Wu Qingyuan, Wei Shuzhen, and Xie Xian, were all present in person, though Wen Dao was missing. Almost all the young and middle-aged elites who had participated in the supreme blood battle and the sword battles in the heavens had also made the journey. They had all lost to Tai Yi, Jing Jia Pai, and one sort Yi Jian back then, so they naturally harbored complex feelings toward Qin Ming. Even top experts of the seventh realm, such as the old barbarian god and Lu Heng, were among them. They never would have imagined that they had lost to a young man all those years ago. Of course, many believed that while Qin Ming was exceptional and could be considered an anomaly, he would still likely fall short against a great sage who had been meticulously nurtured in the Jade Capital. In Twin Tree Village, Bai Meng was as talkative as ever. Brother Ming, you've been gone for over 5 years. It truly feels like a lifetime has passed, as if I haven't seen you in ages. Tang Yusheng wore a red dress that accentuated her slender figure and willow-like waist. Her black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, and her beautiful face was flawless. At this moment, she stood by the fire spring before the black-white tree. Bathed in the rosy light of dawn, she seemed enveloped in layer upon layer of divine rings, her presence utterly ethereal. She gently pushed the chatterbox Bai Meng aside, walked to Qin Ming, and began to examine him closely. Are you fully recovered? She asked softly, placing her slender hand on his shoulder to carefully assess his condition. Bai Meng chimed in, Brother Ming, when my sister heard your hair had turned white from old age, she was heartbroken. Thud. He immediately took a punch to the gut. I'm fine. How have you all been these past few years? Qin Ming asked. Brother Ming, I'm on the verge of breaking my curse. I'm doing great. Bai Meng exclaimed enthusiastically, stepping forward to give his good friend a hearty hug. With a warm smile, Qin Ming returned the embrace. Then, showing no favoritism, he also gave Tang Yusheng a light hug. Tang Yusheng's face instantly flushed. Sister, hurry up and thank me. See, I'm the one who created this opportunity for you. Bai Meng sent a secret telepathic transmission. Clearly, he had inevitably taken another punch. Bai Meng was fine in every other way, but he really shouldn't have had that mouth of his. I'm going to Kaisha City. You can all come along later to watch the excitement. Qin Ming stayed in Twin Tree Village for only a moment before preparing to leave. He had already promised Meng Xinghai earlier that he would meet the great sage of Jade Capital today. All right. Tang Yusheng nodded. We'll all go, Yu Zhensheng, Ning Siqi, and the others chimed in. They wanted to know the envoy of Jade Capital's purpose. Could the rumors be true, that he was here to appoint Xiao Qin as a hidden disciple? With a sudden flash, Qin Ming's true body vanished. He pierced through the thick clouds, going once again to cultivate by gathering the essence of the 9 heavens. Meanwhile, his outer demon body and sworn brothers had already arrived in Kaisha City and entered the city. Qin Ming has appeared. He really has grown a large amount of white hair. The rumors were true. So this is Tai Yi, Jing Jia Pai, and one sort Yi Jian. I never would have thought that these were all titles Qin Ming had earned. Many people's gazes were fixed on the man with half-white hair, their expressions filled with curiosity and astonishment. Even those who had known him before looked on with complicated emotions. After all, many had not known that he was actually 4 people in one. Quite a few of them had been defeated by his different personas. Master. Su Mohua waved happily from the crowd. Her cousin, Su Moran, and Gao Chan, who stood beside her, were both deeply shaken. They had known Qin Ming for a long time, but they never would have imagined he was so heaven-defying, hiding his true strength so deeply. However, his hidden identity was now completely exposed. Who are the people with him? Their auras are so powerful. That Minotaur, and that stunning purple-haired woman, they're clearly no ordinary figures. They look like beings from the outer realm. The crowd believed that even if Qin Ming's true identity were revealed and shocked the world, it still wouldn't match the prestige of the great sage of Jade Capital. Inside the city lord's mansion, the young great sage possessed an incredibly keen spiritual perception. He had already sensed the arrival of the person he was waiting for. Beside him, the envoy, a top-tier expert in the 7th realm of physical body cultivator, immediately paled. He had just seen the Dharma King. He quickly reported this discovery to the direct descendant of Jade Capital. The young great sage, who had been acting somewhat reserved and refusing to stand up to greet the guests, now looked grave. The legendary Dharma King was walking side by side with Qin Ming. He immediately rose and walked outside with the envoy. Qin Ming has quite the reputation. Even the great sage of Jade Capital is coming out personally. This is likely out of respect for heavenly god Lu. Many people whispered among themselves, their faces filled with astonishment. The next moment, the crowd was stunned. The great sage of Jade Capital's behavior far exceeded their expectations. A beaming smile lit up his face as he strode forward to greet them. With a warm and enthusiastic gesture, he cupped his hands and said, Great Sage Qin Ming, I have long heard of your great name. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel. Night Without Borders. Chapter 732, The Light of Night Prefecture 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Qin Ming. A great sage. What is going on? Everyone was struck with astonishment. From the peak earth immortals like Lu Heng, the old clan leader of the Huang family, and the old barbarian god, down to the younger generation like Zhou Tiandao and Lu Chengyuan, their expressions froze. Some wondered if they had misheard. But in such a setting, how could a great sage from the Jade capital make a slip of the tongue? Moreover, he had personally come out to greet him, his smile as warm as a spring breeze. Such a fervent posture clearly showed he was highly valued. In an instant, a wave of astonishment crashed through the minds of some. Qin Ming has another identity. Even the most quick-witted among them found it hard to believe. He was not just Tai Yi, Jing Jia Pai, and one sort Yi Jian, he also possessed the even more venerable background of a great sage. Yao Chan's face turned as rigid as stone. In the early years, he had been dissatisfied with Qin Ming, worrying that the man had grown too close to Su Moran and had repeatedly tried to make things difficult for him. Now, he was completely lost. The gap between them had become immeasurable. "Sister, is my master a great sage?" Su Mohua asked in a low voice. As his disciple, she had never known her teacher's true status. In recent years, Qin Ming had disappeared from sight, keeping an outrageously low profile. Even after his return, he had never mentioned his true cultivation level to his disciples. Acquaintances like Feng Zizhi and Yan Zuohua felt their scalps tingle, their minds reeling as if struck by a landslide. They stared blankly at the face that had once greeted them with easy smiles. Years had passed, yet his aura remained unchanged, a transcendent detachment laced with a brilliant smile, his eyes as clear as mountain spring water. The only difference was the touch of white hair now streaking his locks. Qin Ming cupped his fist in greeting, returning the smile. The great sage of Jade Capital had shown goodwill, and Qin Ming would not be rude in return. Every eye was fixed on the scene. Qin Ming's failure to correct the title was undeniable proof, he was a genuine great sage. In an instant, the sudden silence was shattered, replaced by a wave of commotion. This was an assembly of figures with extraordinary status, and many were visibly restraining themselves. Had this been any other venue, the noise would have been deafening. Even so, people leaned in to whisper, their hushed conversations rippling through the crowd. The way they looked at Qin Ming had utterly changed. Even the native experts, the old monsters of Night Prefecture, were profoundly surprised. Ripples of shock stirred in their eyes as they gazed at the young figure. A junior who truly embodies the spirit of Night Prefecture, he certainly kept his true depth well hidden. They could not help but marvel at how the new generation was taking over. The style of this rising wave threatened to wash them, the wave that came before, right out of the picture. "Brother Qin and everyone else, please come inside," the great sage of Jade Capital said with a beaming smile, gesturing politely. He had already discerned that the individuals accompanying Qin Ming were all extraordinary. Setting aside the Dharma King's status and the purple-haired woman's world-shaking beauty, even the Minotaur alone exuded an unfathomable aura. Qin Ming smiled and replied, "You are too polite, fellow Taoist. This place is practically my second home. Uncle Meng has guided and taken care of me all along, and I've come here to trouble him no end of times over the years." As he spoke, he gestured for Meng Xinghai, who was standing beside him, to join them. In such a setting, even as a city lord, old Meng would have been too insignificant to matter, relegated to the sidelines. But now, Qin Ming had singled him out, drawing everyone's attention. Meng Xinghai felt a bit dazed. He was well aware of Qin Ming's terrifying strength, how, since emerging into the world, he had remained undefeated among his peers. He even knew the secrets of Qin Ming's connections to Tai Yi and Jing Jia Pai. Yet, he was still profoundly shocked. The direct successor of Jade Capital was actually treating Xiao Qin with such courtesy. Meng Xinghai's heart raced, but a wave of warmth also washed over him. Qin Ming was publicly acknowledging their relationship, elevating his status. One had to realize, this was Jade Capital territory, after all. Qin Ming was very likely to become a hidden disciple. At such a critical juncture, for Meng Xinghai to be warmly addressed as Uncle Meng by Qin Ming meant that from this point on, as long as he didn't bring trouble upon himself, all his affairs would surely prosper. Behind them, Pei Shuyan and Cheng Sheng stood dumbfounded. They never would have imagined that Qin Ming, who had been drinking and feasting on black boar meat with them just days ago, possessed a fifth identity. Even Yao Ruoxian, who believed she knew Qin Ming very well, was momentarily stunned. 5 in 1. To think that my native Night Prefecture has produced a great sage. The disciples of the awakening path were the most excited. Qin Ming's performance had far exceeded their wildest expectations. Zhao Yaoting, Leng Feiyui, and Kai Jingcheng, the seeds of the esoteric sect and the immortal path, were also lost in thought, immersed in their memories. They had met Qin Ming during his very first journey away from home, shortly after his emergence into the world. Back then, our group was traveling by airship to Kunling. On the way, we stopped at a secret realm in the heavenly realm to gather herbs. That was when he fell from the night sky. Recalling the past, they were filled with endless emotion. Su Xian and Tang Yutian from their group had long since perished on the Divine Lament Plains. They had always thought they were the ones who had gone the furthest and climbed the highest. After all, among them, there was a pure yang physique, a descendant of the immortal path, and the disciple of a seventh realm ancient monster from the esoteric sect. As it turned out, in just a few short years, Qin Ming, who had been the weakest among them back then, had already become a great sage. It seems I was the one being presumptuous by disturbing you, the great sage of Jade Capital said, his tone gentle. After all, strictly speaking, Qin Ming was half the master of this place. The great sage of Jade Capital, whose name was Si Weiyang, appeared to be no more than 25 or 26 years old. He had thick, dark hair, eyes as brilliant as the stars, and an imposing, distinguished air. These are all my friends, Qin Ming introduced the people beside him simply. He only mentioned their names without revealing the identities of Meng Jiu, Zhou Tian, and the others. However, the seventh realm envoy of Jade Capital secretly caught his breath. He was responsible for external affairs and had heard the names of these great sages before. As for Si Weiyang, all he needed to know was that the Dharma King was present. That was enough. With so many experts from all factions arriving today, the original City Lord's mansion was naturally too small to accommodate everyone. A high-ranking old earth immortal took out a treasure refined from a blessed land and instantly transformed it into a dojo. Within it, spiritual mountains rose one after another, purple bamboo forests grew in vast groves, and immortal lakes rippled with shimmering light, dotted with numerous pavilions and terraces. This solved the problem of insufficient space, allowing all of today's visitors to be accommodated. On the cliffs within the blessed land, white mist drifted, and auspicious orchids released radiant glows. Cranes circled in the sky, creating the complete picture of an immortal's cave dwelling. In truth, the envoy of Jade Capital wasn't the only one who recognized the Dharma King, some of the old Earth immortals had also sensed it. Back then, during the Supreme Blood Battle, a few old monsters who had emerged from the nine-colored ice mountain discovered the Dharma King's return and informed the Earth immortals of the current era. Thus, seeing the Dharma King and Qin Ming walking together today, some of the old fellows' eyelids twitched uncontrollably. Like the envoy, they dared not publicly reveal the Dharma King's identity. At that moment, Heavenly Venerable Lu Heng, who was inside the Blessed Land, came forward to welcome them warmly. He wasn't approaching the Dharma King, but was here for Qin Ming. Brother Qin, you really kept your big brother in the dark all these years. After their duel on the sword dueling platform, he had once exchanged friendship with Tai Yi on equal terms. Senior. Qin Ming greeted him. Lu Heng's face hardened. What, senior? You called me, big brother, back then. Why are you acting like a stranger now? Qin Ming smiled and said, all right, I was being too formal. I'll still call you Big Brother Lu. As the saying goes, everyone helps carry the flowery sedan chair. Who could truly remain aloof from such customs? If Qin Ming weren't a great sage and had no connection to heavenly god Lu, he would never receive such treatment. If an ordinary minor cultivator dared to approach out of the blue and call Heavenly Venerable Lu, Big Brother, they would be glared to death with a single look. Beside them, young Heavenly Venerable Lu Zheng's expression turned wooden. Recalling how he had looked down on Qin Ming in the past, had he just been demoted by several generations for no reason. He wanted to retreat, surely he wasn't expected to address Qin Ming as, Grand Ancestor, was he? Beside him, Lu Jingli was completely numb. After all, Qin Ming had nearly become her arranged marriage partner. Lu Heng glared at them and said, you worthless children. You should learn from great sage Qin in the future. He was furious. His two descendants had clearly had excellent opportunities to build a close relationship with Qin Ming years ago, yet they had let it all come to nothing. The siblings' emotions were too complex to describe. They forced themselves to step forward and greet him. Greetings, great sage Qin. Qin Ming turned to look at them and said, no need for such formalities, let us simply address one another as peers. The old barbarian god stepped forward in admiration. Young brother Qin, you truly are the most brilliant figure of an era. To become the legendary great sage at only 20-something years old. His cultivation was extremely profound, reaching the great perfection of the seventh realm domain. He was even revered as a heavenly god by the beings of his territory. Though that title was an exaggeration, it still spoke volumes, his strength was truly terrifying. The higher-ups of the various ancient mountain peaks in the heavens all viewed him with wariness. Back when the sword duels in the heavens took place, the old barbarian god had engaged in cordial exchanges with Tai Yi, which was why he had stepped forward now to reminisce. Qin Ming was no longer the naive youth he had been when he first set out into the world. He handled such social situations with ease, chatting and laughing with everyone. Get over here. This is Lord Qin, the old barbarian god commanded, dragging his own grandson forward. Xiao Jinyi's face instantly fell. How could he not recognize Qin Ming? They had once debated the Tao and competed against each other. The Lu siblings only called Qin Ming, great sage, so why did his grandfather insist on calling him, Lord? The old barbarian god's instincts were sharp. He suspected Qin Ming might be approaching the Ancestral Realm. Such a figure was destined to become a high-ranking official in the Jade Capital and a major power in the Night Mist world centuries from now. Thus, he glared at his grandson, ordering him to stop dawdling. Lord Qin. Xiao Jinyi feared his grandfather. At this moment, his face burned with shame, and he felt tears welling in his eyes as he forced out the words. Nearby, some of the younger disciples tried to laugh, but were glared back into submission by their elders. Even worse, a few unlucky young men were summoned forward by the ancient monsters, forced to greet Qin Ming as their junior. What the hell? The group of arrogant young geniuses felt their composure crumbling. Though they knew they were far beneath a great sage, being forced to act several generations junior was still too much to bear. For a moment, they all wanted to retreat. This place was unbearable. Yet, the ancient monsters refused to let them go, their glares keeping them rooted to the spot. Representatives from Star Mountain, Thunder Marsh Palace, and the Sword Court all stepped forward, surrounding Si Weiyang and Qin Ming, eager to forge closer ties. Some broke out in a cold sweat, their hearts pounding with unease. Among them was Xie Muza, a Grand Master from Star Mountain, who felt particularly restless. Before the Supreme Blood Battle, he had represented his ancient mountain peak in an attempt to win Qin Ming over, but his approach had been far too forceful, bordering on intimidation. This world is a complex place. You are an adult now, you must take responsibility for your actions and think carefully, he had told Qin Ming back then, a statement that was already considered quite out of line. Now, Xie Muza's heart hammered in his chest. What had he done? He had threatened a hidden disciple of Jade Capital. He followed the Star Mountain leadership forward, not daring to mention their past encounters. Instead, he forced himself to bow deeply to Qin Ming. In truth, even Si Weiyang, the great sage of Jade Capital, had a look of gravity deep in his eyes. The leadership had ordered him to descend to the ground to meet Qin Ming and exchange words. At this moment, he suddenly realized that his earlier assumptions had been woefully short-sighted. It was obvious, this Qin Ming was far from ordinary. Si Weiyang only knew that Qin Ming was a great sage. There was absolutely no information regarding Qin Ming's whereabouts over the past few years or the people by his side. Clearly, the ancient monsters must know the full story. Yet, Si Weiyang had been kept completely in the dark. The Jade Capital isn't just interested in the hidden disciple's caliber. Si Weiyang realized that this might also be a test and a trial for him. Therefore, he couldn't afford to take this lightly. He was also a pawn in this game, being scrutinized by the higher-ups. Brother Qin, have you traveled far away these past few years? Si Weiyang asked. The Jade Capital had only recently awakened. Its direct descendants, like him, focused primarily on their cultivation and lacked knowledge of the distant lands. However, he was certain that this mighty dragon had not been raised locally. If he had, he would have been noticed long ago. He must have risen to prominence in a distant land, returning only after becoming a great sage. I did travel, Qin Ming nodded. The envoy of Jade Capital smiled, revealing his identity. Everyone, you may not know, but while Qin Ming was traveling, he was known as the Shining Envoy of Justice, earning a formidable reputation. He stopped short, subtly hinting to Si Weiyang that Qin Ming was extraordinary, yet he couldn't say too much. After all, Si Weiyang was also a piece on the board, an object of observation himself. Qin Ming was speechless. I was clearly the light of the righteous path. How did I become the Shining Envoy of Justice? It was all because the various clans spoke different languages. After countless rumors and distortions, the name, Zheng Guang, had taken on different meanings in different regions. By the time the stories reached the territory of Jade Capital, Qin Ming's title had become completely unrecognizable. Most of the people present were completely oblivious to the meaning of the name. Only a few ancient monsters from the ancient mountain peaks had a glimmer of recognition in their eyes. They had heard some rumors. Even though we are isolated from the outside world, this old man has vaguely heard of such a name. This alone proves just how much of a reputation young friend Qin has built in the outer realm, the Seven Convergence realm of the Sword Court said with a grave expression. The group of ancient monsters all grew solemn. Any name that could travel from so far away had to be truly extraordinary. As expected of the light of our Night Prefecture, one of the Seventh Realm experts from Night Prefecture remarked. Helian Chengyun, Leng Mingkong, Lu Yu, and Chu Candlin had all reached a higher level of cultivation. This junior is unworthy of such praise, Qinming thought to himself, feeling uneasy. These old monsters were the very pillars of Knight Prefecture's spirit, he had to be extremely careful when dealing with them. At this moment, the old clan leader of the Huang family spoke up. Young friend Qin, you are too modest. To be a great sage of the Jade Capital Realm is to be a true prodigy of our generation. His heart was pounding. The Huang family conducted business in the Outer Realm, and they had heard of the Shining Envoy of Justice as early as 4 years ago. They even knew that this person was suspected to be the youngest great sage in the world. However, they never imagined that this person hailed from Knight Prefecture and was actually the same person as Qinming and one sort Yi Jian. Therefore, after the old clan leader of the Huang family connected Qinming's various identities, he was profoundly shocked. He stepped forward, showing even more enthusiasm than the others. Beside him, Huang Mingxuan's heart was no less turbulent, as if a monstrous tsunami had just struck. She had never expected Qinming to have the identity of a great sage, far surpassing her wildest imagination. The old clan leader's eyes burned with fervor. If the occasion were any different, he would have gladly swallowed his pride and asked to become sworn brothers with Qinming. Even so, he followed the example of the old barbarian god and the others, instructing several of his younger generation to step forward and address Qinming as Lord Qin. Huang Mingxuan felt as if she had been struck by lightning, her entire being thrown into turmoil. She was consumed by regret and despair, feeling as though she had squandered a chance to rewrite her destiny. What stung the most was that Qinming had never even heard of her before. Soon after, the older generation stepped back, moving toward the envoy of Jade Capital. Brother Qin, please have some tea, Si Weiyang said. This was an immortal tea he had brewed himself, a remarkable creation from the Jade Capital. In truth, although the old monsters were chatting in the distance, they had been keeping a close eye on the two of them. As for the younger generation, except for those who felt humiliated by being forcibly demoted several generations and had retreated to the back, the rest of the young and able-bodied cultivators were focused intently on the two great sages. For instance, Yun Jianyu, who had already been chosen to enter the Jade Capital, knew that today's exchange between the two great sages would likely involve a discussion on the Tao. Clearly, Si Weiyang did not wish to compete with Qinming in front of everyone. Some contests could be won through casual conversation. Just as he was brewing the tea now, he had infused it with his own Tao resonance. The so-called test of the hidden disciple's caliber had already begun. The Celadon teacup was as thin as a cicada's wing. Though the tea had been brewed with boiling water, no wisps of white steam rose from the cup. The tea liquid itself seemed to have solidified. More than that, it reflected the myriad phenomena of the world. It was just a cup of tea, yet within it lay towering mountains, a primitive forest, and a mighty river, a 10,000-li landscape of breathtaking beauty. Beyond that, specks of starlight shimmered on its surface. This was no ordinary cup of tea, it seemed to contain an entire world. The saints, Wu Qingyuan and Xie Xian, watched with grim expressions. Standing close, they observed intently, feeling their very souls being drawn into the teacup. Having only recently ascended to the fifth realm, they felt as if they were facing the great abyss, humbled by their own insignificance before the tea. Qinming remained calm as he lifted the cup. The tea within had solidified into a single mass. Even when shaken vigorously, not a single ripple formed, making it impossible to drink. Qinming smiled faintly and blew a gentle breath. Instantly, a wisp of blade intent, sharp enough to cleave the heavens, descended into the cup and sliced through the solidified tea. At that moment, a fragrant tea aroma rose in curling wisps. More than that, a dense array of divine radiance erupted, shooting upward like ground fire taking flight or a volcano spewing lava. Though the cup's rim limited the scale, the sight was nonetheless catastrophic to many observers. Many of the young men and women present felt their minds on the verge of shattering just by watching. The tea contained a terrifyingly concentrated mixture of mysterious substances, true heavenly fire, otherworldly essence, sacred demonic essence, and more. If this concentrated power were to erupt, it could shatter mountains and boil dry vast lakes. Qinming's expression remained serene as he sipped the tea. The flowing light and subtle divine radiance, powerful enough to shatter mountains and rivers, now flowed into his mouth as soft, silken threads. With a single breath, he drew in the heavenly fire, sacred demonic essence, and otherworldly essence, merging them into primal chaos. Fine tea, and highly nourishing, Qinming said with a smile. He took a small sip. The tea soup, containing the essence of all creation and the brilliant starlight, flowed into his mouth like a liquid world. To a master, this cup of tea was like a terrifying active volcano brimming with mysterious substances. Yet he drank it with ease. Qinming was now returning these terrifying substances to their origin, transforming them into primordial one qi, truly a great nourishment for him. To drink the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers in a single gulp. What a magnificent spirit! An ancient monster praised. Wu Qingyuan, Xie Xian, and the others were shaken to their core. Is this the gap between a saint and a great sage? If it were them, they would never have dared to touch that teacup. Zhou Tian spoke up, why were there no cups for the four of us? Is this how the Jade Capital treats its guests? Si Weiyang showed a look of apology. My apologies, honored guests. Please do not take offense. I will have them ready immediately. With focused concentration, he brewed the tea and served 4 cups. The tea soup within each cup also contained the essence of all creation and was covered in starlight, appearing like 4 worlds contained within cups. Meng Jiu, Qian Cheng, Niu Wuwei, and Zhou Tian each accepted a cup of tea. As they gently blew on the surface, a terrifyingly wondrous sight erupted, as if 4 separate worlds were about to burst open. However, as they lowered their heads to take a sip, all the violent, mysterious substances were instantly suppressed and absorbed by them. Zhou Tian gritted his teeth inwardly, feeling as if his tongue had nearly been scalded. Damn it, he thought, if I'd known, I wouldn't have stepped forward. This damn tea from the Jade Capital tastes terrible. The scene fell silent, everyone's expressions frozen. Normally, the young people present lacked the fortitude to even touch this tea, only a great sage could consume it without fear. Though some had already guessed the truth upon seeing the 4 walk with Qin Ming, the confirmation still left them profoundly shaken. Could it be? They are all great sages. Someone asked, their voice trembling unnaturally. Both the younger and older generations were completely awestruck. Even the ancestor-level experts wore grave expressions. The Jade Capital had been isolated from the outside world for so long, yet today, so many monstrously talented individuals had arrived. It was truly staggering. Seeing the crowd's stunned silence, the envoy of Jade Capital had to step forward and directly announce the identities of the newcomers. Meng Jiu, a great sage of the Dream Insect clan, having already reached the Ancestor Realm. Great Sage Zhou Tian, a prince of the Demon Court. Niu Wuwei, a hidden disciple of Tushita Palace. The envoy did not introduce the Dharma King, daring not to reveal his identity so easily. The backgrounds of the first 3 alone had already caused a massive uproar, leaving everyone deeply shaken. Moreover, it was now known that these individuals were all Qin Ming's sworn brothers. They were all great sages. Many found it hard to believe. The few years Qin Ming had spent venturing out had clearly been far more eventful than anyone had imagined, implying he must have achieved an incredibly glorious record of battles. After revealing the identities of the others, the envoy of Jade Capital saw that the crowd of young men and women was all intimidated by the great sages from the outer realm. He frowned slightly and continued, Qin Ming, the Light of Night Prefecture, the youngest great sage of the current era. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 733, The Strongest on the Surface, 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Inside the Blessed Land, the atmosphere had just been lively, filled with laughter and conversation. In an instant, the mood turned heavy, and a deathly silence fell over the crowd. Many had thought they had unraveled the mystery of Qin Ming's multiple identities, little did they expect that digging deeper would reveal an even more astonishing background. The youngest great sage of the current era. An ancient monster's voice trembled slightly. Such a terrifying title carried immense prestige. The envoy of Jade Capital added, among the known great sages in the observable night mist world, Qin Ming possesses an overwhelming age advantage. The crowd fell silent. Did they really need to be that precise? Heavenly Venerable Lu Heng rose and walked over, saying, young brother Qin, you truly are a divine mind. The more we excavate, the more brilliant you shine. Qin Ming replied, Senior. Lu Heng corrected him, I told you to call me Big Brother. Qin Ming complied immediately, changing his address, Big Brother, don't praise me to death. A divine mind sounds like a bottomless pit. A group of people swarmed over. Among them were ancestor-level figures and earth immortals. They didn't just approach Qin Ming but also greeted Meng Jiu and Niu Wuwei. Many had long suspected that these individuals possessed extraordinary backgrounds. Yet, upon learning their true origins, a stir still rippled through the crowd. A hidden disciple of Tushita Palace, a prince of the Demon Court, and a legendary dream insect, each one, on their own, would be enough to draw the attention of the entire world. Their statuses were simply too illustrious. The crowd's gaze shifted to Qin Ming, their expressions transforming. Many now felt that Lu Heng's words rang true. The deeper one dug into Qin Ming's past, the more one discovered he had hidden depths they had never even suspected. Wu Qingyuan, Xie Xian, and the others suddenly felt that being a saint was nothing special. Compared to Qin Ming, they were utterly eclipsed. Once, in this region, they had stood high above the rest, courted by the ancient mountain peaks, the center of everyone's attention, and hailed as the peerless experts of the future. But now, a figure far more monstrously talented than any of them had appeared. Beside the Saint Wei Shuzhen, the high-ranking members of the Huang family had already risen and were walking straight toward Qinming. Earlier, when they had chosen Wei Shuzhen as their son-in-law, they thought they had placed their bets on the right horse and grasped the future's trend. Now, the group sighed inwardly, realizing they had severely misjudged. If they remembered correctly, Qinming had only been a candidate on their backup list back then. In fact, they had only sent a daughter from a branch family to try and win him over. Members of the Kui family had also arrived at the Blessed Land, though they held back from stepping forward. When two venerable elders of the Kui family heard the news drifting in from the brilliantly illuminated area, they felt as though the sky were collapsing upon them. What kind of cursed fate is this? Has our clan been forsaken by the heavens? We had a future great sage in our midst all along, only to push him straight into the opposing camp. The Kui clan elders beat their chests and stomped their feet in frustration, wishing they could immediately return to the clan, seize Kui Chi and the others, slap them hard across their faces, and send them all back to their mother's wombs. Meng Jiu possessed an incomparable grace, even her flowing purple hair seemed to shimmer with Dao resonance. Having reached the sixth realm, her every movement embodied a perfect harmony between humanity and nature. She remained poised and unruffled, even when dealing with ancient monsters. Zhou Tiān, who usually indulged in the mortal world, enjoying music and dance, was quite down to earth. But on an occasion like today, he carried himself with great majesty, his expression stern and unsmiling, befitting his status as a prince of the demon court. As for Niu Wuwei, his naturally expressionless face exuded an air of aloofness and solemnity. The Dharma King's imposing presence spoke for itself, even the ancient monsters dared not approach him lightly. Zhou Tiān spoke up. We crossed domains to come here simply because we heard that after our sixth brother met with trouble, there were those harboring malicious intent, seeking to harm him and those around him. Hiss. The crowd gasped, drawing in the night mist. These great sages had come to stand by Qinming. But who would dare to defy the heavens and strike at this young great sage? I believe there must be a misunderstanding, someone spoke up. Lu Heng added, Brother Qin, if you ever feel threatened, just tell your big brother here. I will certainly help you wipe out any demons or monsters that cross your path. People realized that with Heavenly God Lu present, no one would dare harm Qinming. In an instant, they realized the truth. The great sages were merely making a statement, a show of force intended to deter potential threats before they could arise. Suddenly, many faces grew grave. Qinming was closely connected to multiple supreme Dao lineages. Moreover, several great sages from afar addressed him as sixth brother. This meant at least 6 people had sworn brotherhood, and all were at the great sage level. The implications of this information alone were staggering. Even the old monsters present felt a sense of awe and solemnity. Lu Heng scolded his descendants, do you see? You are the same age, yet your achievements are worlds apart. You should learn more from Lord Qin. Lu Zheng and Lu Jingli's faces flushed crimson. Earlier, they had only been called over to address him as Great Sage Qin. But in just a few moments, they had been demoted several generations, just like Xiao Jinyi. What are you laughing at? Get over here. Another old monster sent a telepathic transmission, scolding his own juniors and ordering them to go forward, pay their respects, and build a closer relationship with Qinming. For many, attending such an event was all about expanding their network. Thus, they actively sought to befriend the public faces of Supreme Dao lineages like Tushita Palace and the Demon Court. However, for the younger generation, this was nothing short of a nightmare. Take Gao Chan and Ji Yu Yanxi, for example. One had once regarded Qinming as his imaginary rival, while the other had been drenched in sweat during their fierce duel on the sword dueling platform. Earlier, they thought they had escaped this ordeal. But now, they were being called forward again to pay their respects to Qinming and acknowledge him as their senior. Xiao Jinyi let out a long breath. Some had laughed at him before, but now, everyone was back on equal footing. Many of the young cultivators looked utterly miserable. At this rate, the event was turning into a family reunion. One could only say that the title of the world's youngest great sage was simply too dazzling. Even Qinming's acquaintances, like Meng Xinghai and Yao Ruoxian, found the situation surreal, as if they were in a dream. Anyone could surmise that Qinming must have ventured alone into the outer realms over the past few years, carving out a formidable reputation through battle. Otherwise, how could he possibly command such high status? Finally, the envoy of Jade Capital intervened, escorting the elder figures away. Seeing this, the group of young cultivators felt as if they had been granted a great reprieve. Within the blessed land, immortal mist swirled among groves of golden bamboo, with pavilions and terraces nestled among them and immortal cranes circling in the sky. The spiritual mountain was lush and elegant, with waterfalls cascading down, treasure medicine herbs sprouting auspiciously, and a gentle breeze carrying a fragrant aroma. At this moment, Si Huaiyang's emotions were truly complex. Previously, he had been very self-assured. After descending to the ground, all eyes were on him, and he was surrounded by representatives from the major factions, like the moon being cradled by 1,000 stars. Yet now, he, a great sage of Jade Capital, found himself no longer the most dazzling figure present. Suddenly, several beings of his own level had appeared across from him, each with a more formidable background than the last. Si Huaiyang took a deep breath and adjusted his mindset, for this was also a test and a trial for him. Clearly, he had no choice but to continue assessing the hidden disciples' true worth. Those who could become great sages naturally possessed their own pride and confidence, otherwise, they would never have reached such heights. In an instant, he regained his composure and calm demeanor. Brother Qin, your journey, rising from obscurity, fighting your way forward, and ultimately becoming a great sage, was far more arduous than mine. I, admire you greatly. Beside him, a stick of incense had, unnoticed, been replaced in the bronze incense burner. The fragrant mist rose and flowed like a gentle stream between the two of them, manifesting various scenes. From the stars hanging over the vast plains and the moon surging down the great river, to the solitary smoke rising straight in the vast desert and the round sun setting over the long river, all were pictures filled with profound artistic conception. Wisps of smoke, fine as silk threads, miraculously projected these magnificent, sweeping vistas. Eventually, all natural landscapes faded away. Before them, only cities and villages remained, bustling with traffic, peddlers and porters, and the intermingled sounds of roosters crowing and dogs barking, fully displaying the myriad aspects of human life. For a moment, it was as if Qin Ming and the others had stepped out of the blessed land. Ahead lay the vibrant, bustling atmosphere of the mortal world, the rich, teeming reality of human existence. This time, Zhou Tian kept his mouth shut, refraining from interjecting. Qin Ming sat quietly, yet his senses had transcended this place. He was facing the dazzling spectacle of the human world, experiencing the powerful impact of the rolling tides of mortal life. His pure yang consciousness was being eroded. His heart tightened. He had seen similar scenes before when fighting Yun Jianyu. However, this time was different. Besides the chaotic psychic energy surging from the mortal world, there was also a white mist that cleared the mind. The Jade Capital's trial was very measured. Is this a protective measure, worrying that a great sage's spiritual domain might be contaminated? Not far away, the ancient monsters of the seventh realm watched intently, immediately recognizing the danger posed by the incense. Dao burning incense. Exceedingly rare, someone murmured, listing its ingredients. A tiny fragment of the northern underworld purple gold whale's horn, containing divine patterns, ground into powder. Mixed with tears of the firmament from the depths of the night mist world, and the sap of the undying tree. Such incense could aid in enlightenment, purifying one's pure yang consciousness and divine wisdom. Yet it also contains terrifying spiritual tribulation qi, the voice continued, born from each person's own past, steeped in the mortal world. Without a doubt, this was no ordinary Dao burning incense. It had been infused with the terrifying tribulations born from the human heart, all gathered here. They're trying to prevent the two great sages from meeting with disaster. No words were needed, all signs pointed to the fact that this trial's difficulty was staggering. Even for a great sage, stepping into it could be perilous. This time, Si Huaiyang paid no mind to Qin Ming. He sat in silent meditation, sweat beading on his forehead. He was trapped within his own spiritual tribulation, forced to give his all. Qin Ming's expression was grim. Facing a mere stick of incense, he felt this trial was far more dangerous than any technique Yun Jianyu had ever unleashed against him. He calmed his mind and focused, severing the tribulation energy and harnessing the incense mist for his own use. In an instant, his mind became as clear as pure crystal. His spiritual perception surged, amplifying several times, then 10 times over. He had entered a state of sudden enlightenment. Qin Ming immediately began to contemplate the most difficult passages of the various scriptures, seeking to conquer them in this moment of clarity. For example, in the black and white scripture, there were techniques regarding the interconversion of void and reality, and the mutual transformation of yin and yang. If he could fully comprehend them, he could swap his true body and waste body at will. Just as Lumo could instantaneously exchange his aged body of the heavenly god for the new god embryo. If Qin Ming mastered this essence, he would undoubtedly gain another life-saving technique. Even if he traveled the world in his true body, he would have no fear of ancient monsters coveting him, for he could swap places with an outer demon in the distant wild at any time. At this moment, spiritual light continuously flickered in his mind. However, his consciousness was soon subjected to erosion. After all, this was a trial, and the surging, spiritual tribulation energy, akin to a raging ocean, threatened to engulf him completely. The fireworks of the vast mortal world can bring down the immortals and gods that fill the sky. The envoy of Jade Capital murmured. This was a reminder, as well as a warning, for the two great sages to be careful. Especially Qin Ming, the envoy of Jade Capital, felt he was being too arrogant by attempting to cultivate here. Qin Ming's form and spirit merged as one, his chaos force surging. He forged the heavenly light, consciousness, and other elements into a single furnace, achieving the state of primordial chaos returns to one, where flesh and spirit were indistinguishable. It was precisely because of this that when the spiritual tribulation qi surged forth, his body and spirit simultaneously resisted the external force. He discovered that the faint wisps of primordial one qi he had initially obtained through returning to the origin could dissolve the spiritual tribulation qi and sever worldly karma. Qin Ming realized with profound clarity that the substance he had converted, which seemed to be primordial qi, was truly extraordinary. At this moment, he became steadfast in his chosen path. As the spiritual tribulation qi continuously surged toward him, he remained utterly fearless. He even began to blend this power into himself, attempting to achieve primordial chaos returns to one and completely refine it. He wore down some of the mortal karmic burdens and refined other wisps of energy, while shattering and dispersing the bulk of the spiritual tribulation energy outside his body. High in the sky, a white-bearded old man sat cross-legged, playing Go with Lumo. Suddenly, the old man looked up, his expression filled with surprise. Could it be that he, just like you, has managed to transition from Tai Ji back to Tai Su and refine a bit of that primordial substance? Tiān, Tai Yi Primordial 1. Tai Ji Supreme Ultimate. Tai Su Great Simplicity. Clearly, he hailed from the Jade Capital. Lumo replied calmly, it is merely a small amount of Tai Su substance. A life-saving technique I bestowed upon him. The old man nodded and said no more. He picked up a white stone and continued the game. In the blessed land of Kaisha City, Si Weiyang wiped the sweat from his brow. The ordeal had been perilous, but he had ultimately managed to withstand the surging spiritual tribulation qi. He had successfully passed the trial, transcending the mundane world. As he looked up, he saw the hidden disciple, his opponent, sitting with a solemn, majestic bearing. The black and white qi flowed around him as he remained deep in a state of sudden enlightenment. At this moment, Qin Ming leaned against the yin while embracing the yang. A misty tribulation qi flowed around his body as he merged with the external world, his true and illusory forms complementing and sustaining each other, aligning perfectly with the true nature of the Tao. This. Si Weiyang stared, entranced. There was no doubt that his opponent had also passed the trial, and he had done so with far greater ease. The spiritual tribulation qi had failed to harm his fundamental essence. A moment later, the Tao burning incense extinguished, leaving only ashes. Qin Ming slowly awoke, thinking to himself with regret. If only there were one more stick of incense. He had just entered the Tao comprehension realm, and his efficiency in comprehending the true and profound had skyrocketed. With a flick of his wide sleeve, Si Weiyang manifested a wondrous scene in the void. In an instant, a gentle breeze stirred, a bright moon hung high, and the night grew hazy. A spiritual lake lay still and rippleless. He had directly used his Tao resonance to evolve a misty world. Like an immortal painting, it descended toward Qin Ming. Though no blood was shed between them, this clash of artistic and spiritual intent was the true measure of their Tao cultivation. The wondrous scene was so vivid it threatened to absorb Qin Ming, transforming him into a mere feature of the painting. Seeing this, Qin Ming swept his right hand, and an azure lotus materialized, slowly descending into the still, deep blue lake. Instantly, the azure lotus of the turbid world swayed, sending ripples across the water. Then, the faint cry of insects rose from the lotus leaves. The ancestral insect was awakening, breathing life directly into the scene. The once static landscape immediately teemed with vitality, brimming with dynamic beauty. Next, a black and a white fish appeared in the lake, frolicking in the water and churning up crests of foam. Qin Ming had seized the initiative, manifesting his own elements within the wondrous scene to take control. Si Weiyang was alarmed, he was being subjected to a counter-corrosion effect. Tao patterns wove across his forehead, materializing into a 9-colored immortal sword. With a resolute strike, he severed his connection to the scene. As the painting blurred and faded, the azure lotus of the turbid world, the cry of the ancestral insect, and the black and white yin-yang fish slowly ascended, detaching themselves and returning to Qin Ming's body. These forbidden techniques had not even fully erupted. With a mere display of intimidation, he had forced the great sage of Jade Capital to retreat. Brother Qin, though you have decades less austere cultivation than I, your Dao cultivation is even more advanced. I am impressed. Si Weiyang, deeply moved, cupped his fist in a gesture of respect. He knew that if the confrontation had continued, he would have gained no advantage. In fact, he had already fallen into a disadvantageous position. The crowd erupted in shock. A direct disciple of the Jade Capital, a mysterious great sage who had lain low for years and was significantly older, how could he fail to subdue Qin Ming, a man in his 20s? Everyone was desperate to know his true level of power. Such a performance was truly terrifying. Young friend Qin, you became a great sage many years ago, didn't you? The Jade Capital's envoy asked, revealing the truth. Yes, Qin Ming nodded. The Jade Capital's upper echelon had clearly investigated him, knowing that shortly after leaving Night Prefecture, he had already shown the potential of a great sage. Soon, when the various factions learned that Qin Ming had likely become a great sage at the age of 22, they all fell silent. What kind of peerless monster was this? The Light of Night Prefecture, the strongest young expert of his generation in the Jade Capital. Someone sighed. Others nodded in agreement, taking it a step further. I think we can remove the Jade Capital restriction and replace it with the entire world. By now, Yu Zhensheng, Ning Siqi, and Tang Yusheng had arrived. Hearing the crowd's words, they were deeply shaken. Brother Ming is the youngest great sage in the world. Bai Meng felt as if he were listening to a myth. How had Qin Ming reached such heights in just a few years? Tang Yusheng's beautiful eyes sparkled, her red lips slightly parted in disbelief. The old Grand Masters of Awakening Path, who had also been staying in Twin Tree Village recently, followed along. They were shaking with excitement, repeatedly saying, good, as a profound sense of satisfaction washed over them. Ning Siqi was grinning so wide he couldn't close his mouth, nearly leaping to his feet. They had so much they wanted to say, but they had to stand in the crowd, struggling to calm their surging emotions. The envoy of Jade Capital asked, if I'm not mistaken, young friend Qin, you have already reached the 9th heaven of Grand Master, haven't you? He possessed a treasure mirror that could discern a person's true cultivation. Hearing this, Qin Ming immediately felt dissatisfied. His secrets were being exposed by this man. The crowd erupted in an uproar. Whether it was his acquaintances or the ancient monsters, everyone was stunned and deeply shaken. Was this the cultivation a young man should have? He was not even 30 years old, yet he was only a hair's breadth away from the Ancestral Realm. What kind of anomaly was this? A myth and legend brought to life. Afterward, the atmosphere became very harmonious. The envoy of Jade Capital didn't dig any deeper into Qin Ming's background, mainly because that was all he knew. A moment later, various delicacies, fruit platters, and fine wines were brought out. Soon, the blessed land filled with the melodious sounds of flutes and zithers, and celestial music began to play. Noble young ladies, including Lu Jingli and Huang Mingxuan, personally took to the floor to dance. Qin Ming found himself unable to escape, surrounded by key figures from the major factions. As the night deepened, deep within the vast, boundless wilderness, an aged figure, steeped in the aura of approaching death, was traveling at a terrifying speed. With each step he took, the plants beneath his feet withered, and the entire landscape seemed to have its essence drained. The old man used the shrinking ground to an inch technique. Every stride he took seemed to overturn mountains and rivers, each footprint acting like a black hole devouring the life force of all things. He was ancient, his face a map of deep wrinkles, shrouded in a heavy scent of decay. By all rights, such a withered being should have long since passed away, yet he remained terrifyingly powerful. Of course, this was also due to his immersion in Xuanhuan Qi, which allowed him to maintain his state to the greatest extent possible. The Demon Province. A truly remarkable place, he murmured to himself. Back when the martial path was being propagated, this was one of the experimental fields. I wonder how it has fared. I shall take a look to see if it is overgrown with weeds or if the crops have ripened. Like a ghost, he moved silently and without a trace, arriving at the edge of Night Prefecture in a single step from the farthest reaches of the land. In the heavens above, the old man playing chess with Lumo suddenly felt the treasure mirror on his body glow, warning him of danger. He snapped his head up, his gaze fixed on the outskirts of Night Prefecture. Fellow Taoist, who might you be? What brings you to our Jade Capital territory? The rumors are true. The Jade Capital has awakened and returned to the world. A withered old man stood at the edge of Night Prefecture, his tone calm and composed, even in the face of a terrifying ancient monster from the supreme Dao lineage. In Kaisha City, under the cover of night, Qin Ming struggled to shake off the crowds and returned to a quiet room, using the excuse of comprehending the technique. Old cloth, this world holds too many secrets. Can you tell me more? Tonight, after interacting with all sorts of people, his heart was stirred. Even the otherworldly jade capital seemed unable to remain completely detached from the mortal realm. It had eras of seclusion and eras of emergence. Why were the supreme Tao lineages all inverted, their fronts facing the great earth? What do you wish to know? Old Cloth replied, a rare occurrence. Why did the sun vanish? What lies in the deepest part of the night mist world? All things have a lifespan. Is this an eternal rule of heaven and earth, or is it constrained by something beyond the heavens? Tonight, Qinming's thoughts were inexplicably chaotic, his emotions running high as he sought to unravel the world's mysteries. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 734, The Crops in Demon Province Have Ripened. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The night was deep, but the world was far from still. Qinming was in a state of resonance with his outer demon avatar, the two were as one. Because of this, even though his physical body was not in Kaisha City, he experienced everything as if he were there. The agitation in the outer demon's heart was, in truth, a reflection of what his true self was feeling. High above Black-White Mountain, deep within the night mist sea, Old Cloth grew somber. After a moment of silence, it replied, you have only just become a senior owner. Your authority is insufficient. Qinming frowned. Can you really not tell me? Old Cloth said, those matters are still far beyond your reach. Why obsessively pursue things so ethereal and unattainable? There are taboos in this world that your current strength cannot touch. Stepping into them too early will only lead to a futile death. Qinming was unwilling to let it go. What is the hidden truth? Why is it kept so secret, as if separated by a sea of clouds? Old Cloth replied, maintaining this distance is not to preserve mystery and the unknown, but rather a form of protection. I can only tell you that the night is as ink, and the heavens and earth are like an abyss. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Qinming's brow furrowed deeply. He had reached the fifth realm and was already a supreme Grand Master. Was he still not qualified to hear the truth? Old Cloth faded into the deep night, its voice calm. A moth desperately chases the light, gazing up at the golden crow whose flames burn the heavens. Before it can even draw near, the mere flap of the latter's wings, the resulting gale and flames, will incinerate it into ash. Qinming was deeply disappointed. Is the only way to learn the truth from Old Cloth to become its master? When will you be able to address me as master? Silence was his only answer. Old Cloth remained profoundly still, not a single sound escaping it. Refusing to give up, Qinming decided to take a more gradual approach. He spoke again, let's start with the supreme Tao lineages. Why are they inverted? Old Cloth finally spoke, but its words were as precious as gold, you have already seen. Qinming froze for a moment, then a memory from years ago flashed through his mind. Back then, the Jade Capital had self-destructed in a desperate attempt to break free from the colossal entity's entanglement, willing to burn itself to the ground to destroy its enemy. Afterward, the inverted city had slowly reappeared. Rumors spread throughout the world that it had undergone a rebirth, a nirvana. But how could a city undergo such a transformation? Could it truly be a living entity? That year, when the ancient heavenly mountain peaks rebelled and sealed the heavens, the ancient monsters on the ground rose in revolt. In that era of chaos, Old Cloth took me beyond the heavens, where I glimpsed a part of the Jade Capital's truth. Even after all these years, the memory remained vividly etched in Qinming's mind. He had seen the inverted Jade Capital, a shimmering mist of light, drifting and unstable. Yet, it manifested rules powerful enough to suppress Earth immortals, with a dense web of Tao chains interwoven across its form. What shook him most, what he still couldn't fathom, was the entire process of the Jade Capital's reshaping and condensation. It was as if a window had been carved into the night sky, and from that mysterious tunnel, various smoke and mist-like sceneries flowed out, surging into the city and converging into myriad scenes. At that moment, Qinming was utterly bewildered. The entire Jade Capital, including the city walls, the heaven-piercing pagoda, the golden pavilion, and more, had actually flowed in from that passage. What kind of place was on the other side? What was the state of its source? Even now, recalling that scene, Qinming was still filled with confusion. When he pressed for answers today, Old Cloth reminded him that he had witnessed it with his own eyes, but said no more. Back then, Qinming could be certain that the only tangible objects within the Jade Capital were the 10-colored ice mountain and the magnificent altar, a mere few. Most of the scenery initially seemed like swirling light and mist, rootless, baseless, and floating precariously. Qinming pondered silently. These things. Perhaps I can ask Old Lu. Old Cloth, what kind of existence are you, exactly? After careful consideration, Qinming realized that the most terrifying and mysterious entity he had encountered was actually Old Cloth, right by his side. To this day, the only detail it had ever revealed about its past was that some called it Yi. At this moment, Old Cloth grew profoundly silent. After a long pause, it spoke in a low, deep voice. I will give you a sincere and well-meaning warning. Qinming immediately turned serious. Go on. You cannot fully trust my words, Old Cloth said. I will only remind you of this once today. Huh. Qinming was truly blindsided. He never expected it to say something so contrary to common sense. A wave of intense unease washed over him. He was keeping a mysterious entity by his side, and even this heretic thought it had a problem. In an instant, Qinming's skin crawled. Am I carrying a gate of hell with me? He wondered, a sudden fear gripping him that he might one day be dragged into it. His expression grew grim. Why are you telling me this now? Do I need to throw you away? As long as you haven't risen to power, Old Cloth replied, there will be no problem. It then added, you are a senior owner. At this point, you can no longer sever this connection. Does this mean I can't even unilaterally discard it? He pressed further. When you say, before you rise to power, what exactly do you mean? Old Cloth calmly informed him, before the 9th realm. When you approach the peak of the 8th realm, you must stop trusting me. Qinming couldn't understand. Why was Old Cloth undermining itself? What did this mean? Was this a disguised form of exterminating one's kin for the greater good? And it was turning that blade on itself. Why are you telling me this? Qinming knew well that Old Cloth was cold and always followed a certain set of rules without flexibility. For it to defame itself today was utterly incomprehensible. According to my current rules, I will naturally favor you, Old Cloth replied. But I do not know what I will become once all my fragments are reassembled. Each fragment contained a portion of its consciousness. Over the years, Qinming had already found many fragments for it. With each fragment's integration, not only did its form change, but its soul also restructured and transformed, incorporating a vast amount of new memories. With each restructuring, my way of thinking and my allegiance will change. In the end, I do not know what form I will take, or if I will stand on the opposite side from you. Old Cloth's candor made Qinming's skin crawl. Such unvarnished truth weighed heavily on his heart. Suddenly, Qinming sensed something amiss. The atmosphere across the entire world turned stiflingly heavy, as if an ancient demonic mountain of unimaginable weight were about to crash down from the heavens upon the mortal realm. Above Kaisha City, a treasure mirror hung high in the sky. Its dazzling Tao patterns intertwined, erupting with a terrifying beam of light that shot toward the horizon. What's happening? Qinming's outer demon body was still within Kaisha City. Through resonance, his true body could clearly feel the suffocatingly oppressive atmosphere. Old Cloth spoke. You'd best stay on Black White Mountain tonight. Qinming froze. It's actually giving me a friendly warning. Is this a change that happened to Old Cloth after I became a senior owner? What's happening in the distance? Qinming asked. Old Cloth replied, as far as you are concerned, a demon has come uninvited. The hair on the back of Qinming's neck stood on end. If even Old Cloth described it as a demon, then it was absolutely formidable. He pushed further. Can we observe it? Why are you including yourself? Old Cloth asked. Qinming replied, let's watch it together. Old Cloth said, that mirror reveals the truth. We can observe from afar. At this moment, the old man from the Jade Capital, who was playing Go with Lu Mo, had a treasure mirror suspended beside him. A terrifyingly powerful beam of light shone toward the border of Night Prefecture. Halt! He shouted in a deep voice. He was currently acting as the Dharma King and held authority over the administration of punishment. His name was Wei Guanxuan, a true 8-realm expert. Of course, in this special era, he could not fully unleash his heaven-piercing cultivation. At the edge of Night Prefecture, the old man with a face full of wrinkles rose into the air. Beneath him, the lush greenery of the barbaric mountain range instantly vanished, turning a withered yellow. Across the mountains and rivers, the vibrant active substances of the vegetation were instantly drained, surging upward into the sky in massive quantities. The old man acted like a black hole. In a single instant, he left the mountains below lifeless and desolate. He was devouring the essence of all creation. If he were to do this everywhere he passed, the devastation would be unimaginable. Even as he absorbed the spirituality of the land, he himself radiated a dense, decaying energy. He spoke faintly, this old man harbors no ill will. I have merely come to see if the crops are ripe. The black hole before him blocked the brilliant yet terrifying mirror light. Wei Guanxuan's voice was hoarse. The lands under the Jade Capital's jurisdiction are not a place you can freely harvest. Setting aside all else, the old man's terrifying ability to devour the essence of all things meant he could never be allowed to enter Night Prefecture. If he turned malevolent, his destructive power would be truly immense. The old man gazed into the depths of Night Prefecture. This experimental field did not reject outsiders back then. I have merely returned to see whether the seeds I sowed long ago have taken root and sprouted, or if the land has become a desolate wilderness overgrown with weeds. Wei Guanxuan, acting Dharma King, spoke with a voice that turned utterly cold. I will say this once more, no matter how formidable your origins, you must not act insolently within the Jade Capital's territory. The decaying old man, a towering figure shrouded in a black hole, exuded a terrifying pressure. I spent so much effort cultivating this crop, only to watch it ripen and then be told my labor was all for nothing. And that I should simply turn around and leave. He was undeniably arrogant. Even facing a powerhouse from the supreme Dao lineage, he showed no intention of retreating. Wei Guanxuan, his hair and beard snow-white, spoke with immense majesty. If you advance any further, you will be provoking the Primordial Dojo Dao lineage. The Jade Capital was also known as the Primordial Dojo. The decaying old man's massive form flickered within the black hole, his blurred silhouette alone enough to make one's heart feel heavy with oppression. This old man has no intention of waging war against you, he said in a deep voice. I'm not here to harvest, but to transplant my crop, to take my successor away. Wei Guanxuan countered, you claim to have sown your seeds in the Primordial Dojo's own backyard. That's absurd. Besides, your so-called transplanting is just sending him to an experimental ground, isn't it? Don't think I'm unaware of your true origins. He then issued a final warning, I've said enough. If you act recklessly, you will bear the consequences. At the edge of Night Prefecture, the decaying old man's aura of decay surged violently. A pity, he murmured. I am old and weary of fighting, but I will not be intimidated. As he spoke, he moved. With a single step, the mountains and rivers behind him flew past like fleeting light, a testament to his terrifying speed. The legendary technique of shrinking the earth to 1,000 miles was, for him, nothing more than a casual stroll. This was the result of him being suppressed by the great heaven and earth, unable to fully unleash his true cultivation. In the current environment, no matter how high one's cultivation, they would eventually be capped by a certain upper limit. Of course, even if the restrictive boundary were similar, an Earth Immortal would never be able to match his performance. An ordinary Earth Immortal, even when unleashing the same level of spiritual power, would be swiftly slain by this man. This was because their understanding of the Tao differed in depth, and their degrees of attunement with the great heaven and earth were vastly different. The decaying old man was fierce and ruthless, charging directly into the Night Prefecture. Wei Guanxuan was enraged. He had laid out all his terms, yet this man still dared to intrude so deeply. This was a blatant provocation to the Primordial Dojo. He vanished into thin air, crossing the night mist sea to teleport directly in front of the decaying old man, intercepting him with overwhelming force. The decaying old man's speed was simply too outrageous. Instead of engaging in a direct confrontation, Wei Guanxuan continuously changed direction, appearing in the skies above various parts of the Night Prefecture. Terrifying roars of thunderclaps erupted across different regions. This mysterious disturbance, accompanied by the surging Tao resonance, was deafening. The scene was utterly terrifying. He appeared across Night Prefecture, seemingly searching for something, sensing something. Wei Guanxuan teleported, pursuing him relentlessly. The decaying old man vanished instantly, reappearing silently in a mountainous region. This time, he made no grand commotion, having already suppressed his black hole aura. He stood there, seemingly struck by a memory, and sighed to the heavens. I still remember this mountain from years ago, where an old friend lamented the twilight of his years and fretted over the path ahead. Now, I know not where his soul has gone, leaving only the ancient tree to still greet the night wind. He was reminiscing about the past. Back then, he had not been the only one to enter Night Prefecture. Clearly, this was an old tale from over 900 years ago. Several mysterious beings had met in Night Prefecture, drinking and singing together as they jointly created a cultivation technique. Boom. Suddenly, the mountain forest exploded. A transparent ice coffin shot into the sky, causing the earth to shatter completely. A terrifying aura surged forth, vast as a churning ocean, with a torrential rain of Tao resonance pouring down. Inside the ice coffin was an old man. He abruptly opened his eyes, and without leaving the frigid, frost-covered sarcophagus, he steered it directly toward the decaying old man. This sudden turn of events sent a shockwave through the many experts currently in Night Prefecture. Even Wei Guanxuan halted instantly, refraining from launching an attack. The towering old man, who seemed to devour all things and stand as if rooted in the abyss, appeared startled. Despite his immense power, he had failed to detect the ice coffin buried beneath the ground. Furthermore, he did not meet the attack head-on. Instead, he chose to evade, stepping aside as the ice coffin hurtled through the air. What is happening? Everyone who witnessed this scene was profoundly shaken. The figure within the coffin was undoubtedly a formidable expert. Otherwise, why would the decaying old man be so wary? A massive amount of white mist billowed from the ice coffin, instantly freezing the towering mountains. The sheer cold radiating from the coffin alone was enough to make many veteran figures tremble in awe and apprehension. With a thunderous boom, the ice coffin flew toward the decaying old man once more, then spontaneously shattered open. From within, an old man enveloped in a web of golden threads emerged, striking fiercely at the decaying old man. Across the night sky, countless golden lightning bolts tore through the heavens. In truth, this was no ordinary thunder fire, but the terrifying longevity force taking form. High above Black-White Mountain, Qinming witnessed the distant scene through the mirror of Dao Rime, conjured from the prison cloth. He froze in place, his heart pounding with utter shock. What had he seen? The two founders of Silk Book had actually appeared in Night Prefecture at the same time, unleashing their ultimate techniques against each other. The old man from the ice coffin, clad in a golden jade robe, was a terrifying sight. The golden threads he wove effortlessly tore through the void and pierced the firmament, erupting in a boundless rain of light that threatened to shatter the entire world as he launched a lethal strike at the decaying old man. "Old friend, I never thought you'd still be alive," the decaying old man said. Before him, multiple black holes overlapped like the gates of hell or layers of an abyss, continuously devouring the dense, horrifying golden threads. The longevity force and the devouring force were actually clashing in Night Prefecture. The old man who had escaped the ice coffin spoke in a frigid tone, "Are you disappointed? Your sneak attack on me failed to achieve its full purpose." The numerous experts of Night Prefecture watched from the horizon, not daring to draw closer. None of them had expected such a bloody history to exist between these two. Boom. In the night sky, the longevity force bloomed like countless flying swords slashing forth, or like heavenly light from beyond the mortal realm pouring down to cover the earth, striking toward the decaying old man and causing the very heavens to collapse. Such an attack was truly astounding. The decaying old man soared in the night sky, unleashing his forbidden domain technique. He wielded the devouring force to counter his powerful enemy, and with himself at the center, the entire cosmos plunged into absolute darkness. From afar, Qinming's heart pounded with alarm. In his mind, the few outsiders from that time had drunk wine and sung songs, embodying great freedom and enlightenment, before ultimately creating the Silk Book. That should have been a beautiful tale. He truly never expected that within such a transcendent and profound artistic conception, there was actually this hidden truth, accompanied by bloody slaughter. Indeed, everything has two sides, a bright and glorious one and another that remains hidden from the world, the latter being utterly wretched and unable to bear the light. This scene stirred Qinming's emotions, and for a moment, his understanding of the black and white scripture seemed to advance further. Above Night Prefecture, an endless sea of thunder seemed to descend, clashing with the abyss. That was the longevity force battling the devouring force, reaching its most fierce and critical moment. Suddenly, Qinming's expression froze, and then he cried out. The old cloth formed the mirror of Dao Rime, and this time it clearly captured the true face of the old man who had escaped from the ice coffin. That face was one that Qinming had dreamed of and longed for, so familiar that he lost his voice on the spot. How is this possible? Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 735, Grandfather Descends from the Heavens. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Qinming stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the impossibly familiar face. His mind churned like a storm, his vision blurring as a sharp, stinging ache pierced his eyes. The one person he had searched for in vain had finally appeared today. Grandfather. Qinming whispered, his voice trembling. For so many years, he had long since abandoned all hope. Back then, it wasn't just him searching. Meng Xinghai, Li Qingyan, and others had helped, even mobilizing their families' resources to scour countless locations. So many people, searching for so long, yet all their efforts had come to nothing. A few scattered clues had suggested the old man had followed a mysterious traveling merchant far away. If there were no miracles, he should have been long dead. Even years ago, his grandfather's health had been dire. He had once muttered to himself that he wouldn't live another 10 years. Now, after more than a decade of disappearance, his grandfather had abruptly reappeared. How could Qinming not lose his composure? His heart pounded wildly, his emotions surging in a violent tide. For a moment, tears nearly spilled from his eyes. This was his only living relative. After all, he had never known his parents. He assumed they had met with some accident long ago. Looking back, Qinming had once lived as a substitute for someone else, his life mapped out by others. What he lacked most of all was true family affection. Even now, having reached this height and become a supreme Grand Master, he looked back at the road he had traveled and found it still filled with regret. He had long ago lost all his kin. Grandfather. Qin Ming murmured, his nose tingling with unshed tears, yet his heart brimming with joy. But even in his excitement, his sharp intuition warned him, this was all too strange. His grandfather had always been an ordinary man, living a life of hardship, his health broken by years of toil. How could he have become a peerless expert? Qin Ming forced himself to calm down and suppress his turbulent thoughts. Memories of the past flooded back. He saw himself as a child, wearing tattered clothes, his toes peeking through holes in his shoes. He and his grandfather had clung to each other for survival, enduring years of poverty. Yet now, his grandfather was wielding the supreme longevity technique, tearing the pitch-black sky asunder with terrifying power. His cultivation was utterly peerless. The contrast between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. Qin Ming stared at the figure within the realm of Tao resonance. The old man's face was indeed that of the grandfather he remembered, but his world-defying posture and lightning bright eyes were nothing like the kin he knew. Did he have his reasons back then? Qin Ming tried to make sense of it, but the pieces still didn't fit. Was he gravely ill, his cultivation depleted? Did he fall into the mortal world and temporarily lose his heaven-shaking powers? Only such an explanation could make any sense. And yet, it still felt far-fetched. The pitch-black firmament tore open as heavenly fire from beyond poured down. The terrifying fluctuations were too much to bear. With every step the old man who had escaped the ice coffin took, flowers of the Tao bloomed, resonating with heaven and earth as if an innate heavenly god had descended. His gaze was too sharp, capable of warping the void with a single look. Qin Ming reflected on the past. His own grandfather had cloudy eyes and sometimes rambled, but his love for him was heartfelt, evident in every small gesture. The old man would stroke his head with rough hands, ask if he had eaten his fill, and inquire if he was cold before the weather had even fully turned. The old man would frown and sigh in secret, worrying about their livelihood. Yet, every time he faced Qin Ming, he would smile, kind and gentle, unwilling to let him be affected by any negative emotions. Qin Ming felt that his grandfather, who had failed to master the silk book, had known frustration and regret, but his edges had eventually been worn smooth by life. He was truly just an ordinary old man. He simply could not reconcile the image of his grandfather with the old man in the night sky, who looked down upon the world with such disdain. Even if their faces were identical, the aura they radiated and the spirit etched into their very bones were complete opposites, utterly different. Most importantly, if that man were truly his grandfather, he would never have watched him suffer for so many years. The old man who had awakened from the ice coffin possessed a cultivation of such profound mastery that even after surviving a sneak attack that had brought him to the brink of death, he must have long since recovered. Qin Ming was certain that if this were his grandfather, the old man's temperament would have compelled him to seek him out the moment he returned. Back when they parted ways, even though Qin Ming was still young, he had been able to clearly sense whether someone truly cared for him. Qin Ming put himself in that position. If his own soul descendant were wandering alone in the world, could he remain indifferent? He would undoubtedly rush to their side immediately. In an instant, he calmed his emotions. The old man, radiating an aura of decay, stood amidst the abyssal darkness and said in a deep voice, "Old Qin, why such fury? We are both at this age, there is no chapter we cannot turn. Sit down, let us talk." Many were startled. The ancestors of Night Prefecture, in particular, immediately thought of a certain person from over 900 years ago, Ancestor Qin Zhaogu. In truth, the crowd had already harbored suspicions when the elder in the ice coffin, clad in his golden jade robe, had beckoned the endless heavenly light. Yao Kangen, just how thick-skinned must you be to say something like that? Qin Zhaogu's face was cold. His conflict with the other man was irreconcilable, their past friendship had long been severed by a bloody assassination, the old memories stained in crimson. Yao Kangen sighed. One by one, our old friends wither away. So few of our contemporaries remain. We should cherish the present. Besides, the grudge between us actually stems from a misunderstanding. I thought you were about to strike, so I struck first. Enough nonsense. Qin Zhaogu cut him off. Across the night sky, a massive golden river surged and crisscrossed. It was Qin Zhaogu's longevity force erupting, as if it had summoned the galaxy to construct the great heavenly star formation. Yao Kangen's face hardened with murderous intent. He manifested a black hole that devoured all things, threatening to swallow the entire firmament as the terrifying black vortex expanded at breakneck speed. Zhou Tian muttered, "What kind of godforsaken place is Sixth Brother's hometown? It's either heart apes, Xuanhuan, or these old demons. It feels like the place is crawling with ancient monsters, all wielding sickles, waiting to harvest everyone else." Meng Jiu and Niu Wuwei were also dumbfounded, their heads feeling as large as buckets as they witnessed this earth-shattering battle. Even their guardians grew solemn, moving to stand beside them. Wei Guanxuan, the acting Jade Capital Dharma King, also felt a chill of awe in his heart. In the night sky, the Tao resonance surged and violently churned. Yao Kangan spoke. Old Qin, don't tell me you came here specifically to wait for me. When you returned to the demon province, was it also to see if the crops were ripe? Above Black-White Mountain, Qin Ming's true body stiffened slightly. The old man, whose face was identical to his own grandfather's, had also been one of the martial technique weavers of the past. Had he returned with the same purpose as Yao Kangan? A sudden chill crept into Qin Ming's heart, and his mind raced with countless thoughts. At this moment, he truly hoped this man was not the grandfather who had been with him in his childhood. Because he did not want to shatter his beautiful memories. Qin Ming wished to forever preserve that past. Though poor, it was filled with the warmth of family affection, in the most cherished place in his heart. Leave Night Prefecture, Wei Guanxuan declared, worried that the battle between the two would devastate the magnificent mountains and rivers of the land below, as well as the brightly lit cities and villages. Simultaneously, he unleashed the heaven and earth manifestation great divine technique. His body expanded boundlessly, his head touching the heavens and his feet treading upon the void, standing tall between heaven and earth. He strode toward the battlefield, his movements causing the night mist sea above the 9 heavens to surge wildly. Countless immortal seals manifested on Wei Guanxuan's body, forming an immeasurable golden body. His every gesture resonated with the great heaven and earth, radiating a terrifying pressure. Then, he established a connection with the inverted Jade capital. The supreme Tao lineage roared, as if it were descending into the present world, drawing closer to the surface. This spectacle made even Yao Kangan, who possessed the aura of an innate god demon, wary. He hurriedly dodged the terrifying radiance rippling outward from Jade capital. With a flash, he vanished from Night Prefecture. Qin Zhaogu also vanished into thin air, pursuing him immediately. Beyond Night Prefecture, in the barren land, the battle between the two peerless experts erupted once more. Old Qin, are you trying to hoard the spoils? It seems some extraordinary seeds have taken root in the once barren fields of the demon province. A strange expression crossed Yao Kangan's face. At their level of cultivation, they could gaze directly into a person's soul. Unless one completely altered their spiritual domain, they could be recognized at a glance. Qin Zhaogu's appearance had long since changed, but for beings of their stature, mere disguises were meaningless. Slaying you is my top priority. In the night sky, Ancestor Qin's voice was cold, his killing intent seeping directly into the marrow of the bones. Yao Kangan's heart instantly grew heavy. He said, Old Qin, could it be that your Tao foundation is damaged, and you won't live much longer? Are you trying to drag me with you on your way out? He was probing. Deep in his eyes, brilliant Tao patterns intertwined. His gaze, once empty as an abyss, now burst with beams of thunder fire as he stared at his opponent. At his fingertips, golden threads also wove together, actually executing his opponent's mysterious technique. He used his opponent's longevity force as a guide, attempting to probe the other's true strength. The golden jade robe Qin Zhaogu wore seemed to ignite, making his entire figure shine even more brilliantly than before. Precisely at this moment, amidst the utmost splendor, a black hole suddenly collapsed into existence before him. He appeared to be clad in a divine garment woven of both light and darkness. His aura surged violently as his left hand unleashed the devouring force and his right hand unleashed the longevity force, striking forward with a sudden, fierce blow. The two powerhouses flashed past one another, each employing the very techniques of his opponent. Boom! A massive chunk of the firmament seemed to vanish, swallowed by the black holes created by the two. Then, the night sky further away exploded, torn apart by their longevity force. The scene was terrifying, it was as if heaven and earth had been left incomplete. In a blur, it felt as if a vast section of the firmament had collapsed. The two combatants were thrown backward, their bodies half covered in blood. The treasure robes they wore, forged from divine materials, were shredded and tattered, and blood streamed from their 7 orifices. Yao Kangan spat out a mouthful of bloody froth and forced a laugh. Hey, it seems using others' techniques is still no good. After all, who didn't hold back a few tricks during our exchanges all those years ago? In the end, only one's own signature techniques can truly dominate the domain. Qin Zhaogu remained silent. The golden jade robe on his body began to crumble, transforming into divine scripture and then into immortal light. Like the longevity great medicine, it nourished his flesh and spirit. His aura soared, and his life force seemed to be continuously ascending. Yao Kangan's expression changed drastically. Are you mad? Do you really want to fight to the death? His face was more solemn than ever before. Old Qin, let's stop. Otherwise, we'll both die. At our age, neither of us can afford a fight to the finish. Boom. The answer he received was immeasurable light and an even more terrifying longevity force. It was accompanied by a wondrous sight. Golden threads, one after another, seemed to pierce through the stars in the sky. You think this old man is afraid of you? Yao Kangan roared. The two mighty cultivators formed a storm of destruction as they clashed in a fierce battle, tearing away into the distance. With each step they took, endless mountains and rivers seemed to reverse their flow. Their speed was beyond comprehension, far surpassing the reactions of everyone present. In an instant, the two destructive forces vanished, leaving no one to know where their battle had moved. Old Cloth did not pursue them, and the mirror of Dao Rime went dark. Qin Ming frowned, remaining silent for a long time. Finally, he let out a long sigh. He had surged forward on his path of cultivation, yet looking back at the trajectory of his life, he found many regrets. Was that ancestor Qin truly the grandfather he had seen in his childhood? His greatest fear was that there had never been any such thing as family affection, only the relationship between a harvester and an experimental seed. If that were true, how tragic it would be. Qin Ming's emotional reflection lasted only a few moments before he regained his composure. After all these years of forging his own path, no truth, however cruel, could shake his resolve. He could not change the past. But he could make choices and take action in the present. He only needed to focus on the here and now. In Kaisha City, Qin Ming's outer demon body emerged. Zhou Tian immediately hurried over. Sixth brother, your hometown is way too sinister. Peerless experts from mysterious clans, terrifying ancient monsters who have mastered the devouring force. Such legendary beings are all appearing here. Meng Ziyu's emotions were a tangled mess. At that moment, figures soared into the night sky, rushing toward the area where the two great experts had just stood. Niu Wuwei spoke up, let's go. We should join the fray too. He wanted to study the battle remnants left behind by the peerless experts. Let me circle around first, Zhou Tian said, stepping forward to predict fortune and calamity. Soon, he nodded. It is safe to go. Qian Cheng added, Wei Guanshuan, the acting Dharma king of the Jade capital, is personally investigating the scene, so there shouldn't be any major issues. Hiss. Second brother, you were truly powerful back then. Zhou Tian couldn't help but sigh softly. Seeing Wei Guanshuan's imposing presence today, he could only imagine how terrifying the true Dharma king of the past must have been. I've told you, I am not him, Qian Cheng shook his head. Meng Jiu said, there's no need to completely sever ties with the past. Qin Ming remained silent throughout, and though he had regained his composure, it was impossible for his heart to be completely undisturbed. Sixth brother, what's wrong? Was that ancient monster coming for you? Qin Ming replied, you all go ahead, I want some peace and quiet. Don't worry. As a hidden disciple of the Jade capital, the Supreme Dao lineage won't stand by and let something happen to you right on their own doorstep. Shortly after, Heavenly God Lu sent a telepathic transmission, do not leave the Black-White Mountain territory for the time being. Even in the dead of night, experts from all walks of life were ascending to the sky, seeking to comprehend the lingering, mysterious Dao resonance of the two great masters. Qin Ming sat in quiet contemplation, only emerging from his room when shallow night arrived. Most of the guests had already departed, even the great sage of Jade capital, Si Weiyang, and the envoy had returned to the Jade capital early. The murmuring waters of the fire spring cast a glow that pierced through the night mist. Xiao Qin, are you all right? Meng Xinghai asked, his face clouded with worry. He had, after all, seen the portrait of Qin Ming's grandfather when he helped search for him years ago. I'm fine, Qin Ming replied, shaking his head. Li Qingyan, Yu Zhensheng, and Ning Siqi also approached. They were privy to the truth as well, and their expressions were grave. Qin Ming's grandfather and Qin Zhaogu shared the same face. When combined with the involvement of Buwu martial technique and Zhuangjia seed sowing, the implications sent a chill down their spines. They feared Qin Ming's state of mind would be affected. Qin Ming. Tang Yusheng had also come early to see him. Though she didn't know the details, she could tell he was troubled. Bai Meng, ever the carefree one, asked, Brother Ming, when are we heading back to Twin Tree Village? I heard there's black boar meat to eat. I still have some matters to settle here. You all should go back and wait for me, Qin Ming said solemnly. If those two were coming for him, the fewer people involved, the better. He even felt that he must either enter the Jade capital or flee early, he could no longer stay in Night Prefecture. After all, how could one guard against thieves for 1,000 days? At this moment, the Kui clan felt as if the heavens were collapsing. A few of their inner circle had seen the portrait of Qin Ming's grandfather. The Kui clan's higher-ups hadn't slept a wink all night. I think that's not Qin Ming's grandfather, but the sower. The relationship between the two is quite complicated. The great ancestral courts of the awakening path in Night Prefecture were also unable to find peace, as several ancestors were meeting in secret. The sudden appearance of two major experts had a profound impact. Qin walked out of the city lord's mansion and strolled down the street. Suddenly, several familiar figures caught his eye, all geniuses who had once left Kaisha City, now seemingly returning after hearing the news. Among them were Cao Long, who followed the giant spirit god path, Mu Qing, who walked the mutation path, and Wei Jiru, dressed in white. The three hesitated, unsure whether to approach him. Qin waved and smiled, greeting them. I knew it. Qin isn't the type to forget us, Cao Long exclaimed, his 6-meter-tall frame making the ground thud with each step. Beside the three men, a young man and woman approached. Qin smiled. Shen Jiayan, Ni Rui, the most dazzling geniuses of Kaisha City over the past 20 years. The two shook their heads first, then waved their hands dismissively. How could they be called dazzling geniuses in the presence of such an old friend? Qin glanced toward the corner of the street. He saw the traveling merchant Xu Sheng, sister Zhou Lin, and Wu Feng, whose family was renowned for their mastery of both spear and bow. Brother Xu, sister Zhou, Xiao Wu. He called out. Brother Qin. Wu Feng exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. Xu Sheng and Zhou Lin, now middle-aged, walked toward him with two children in tow. After all these years, facing Qin again, the three old friends felt a slight awkwardness. Their expressions weren't as natural as they had been in the past. In their minds, after all, he was a supreme Grand Master, his status and position were simply too high. Qin sighed inwardly. Time had flowed on, and while his own feelings toward his old friends remained unchanged, they now felt an inexplicable pressure in his presence. So many people and things had changed, they could never go back to the way things were. He realized it was time for him to leave. In truth, he thought, you can't blame them. They wouldn't have even been qualified to attend the gathering last night. And yet, this grand spectacle was all Qin doing. How could these people not feel the pressure? Sensing something, Qin looked up toward the street ahead. There stood a young woman, her eyes curved into a smile as she waved at him, her face radiant. Then, she turned and walked away. She was the girl who used to laugh so much back then. She, too, must have been someone unqualified to attend the meeting. Years ago, in this very city, she had sent someone to deliver him a copy of the Five Thunder Viscera refining technique. Qin nodded and waved back. The young woman paused for a moment, then quickened her pace and disappeared into the distance. Following Lu Mo's instructions, Qin remained in Kaisha City for the time being. This place can sustain the Jade Capital Dao resonance. Heavenly God Lu knew this was his waste body, not his true form. As night fell again, a towering figure appeared outside the quiet chamber where Qin was in seclusion. It was Yao Kangen, standing within a black hole, his presence terrifying. For a powerhouse of his caliber, simply stepping into Night Prefecture and doing a little digging would be enough to uncover whether the martial techniques had been successfully established in the past. Especially with the recent flood of rumors about Qin, there was no need to dig deep. Moreover, he was in Kaisha City without trying to hide. It was only natural for someone to track him down. Whoosh! Qin Zhaogu appeared directly inside the quiet chamber, a step faster than Yao Kangen. He sat down beside Qin and poured himself a cup of tea. Qin pupils contracted, it was truly a case of, sitting at home when grandfather descends from the heavens. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 736, An Irresistible Temptation. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Qin body tensed. He felt acutely that the overall environment of the Night Mist world was too dangerous. He had been sitting in meditation within the secret chamber, yet someone had appeared right beside him without him sensing a thing. Had the intruder chosen to strike a lethal blow, days might have passed before anyone discovered he had met a gruesome end in this very room. Even as a supreme Grand Master, Qin felt a profound lack of security at this moment. Was this truly his grandfather? He could not be certain, although the appearance matched, the aura, that majestic dignity inherent to a peerless expert, stood in stark contrast to his childhood memories. Qin rose and bowed to the man. Even if this wasn't his grandfather, the man deserved his respect. After all, he was the true source of the Silk Book. Qin had used this technique as his fundamental scripture, and his dedicated study of it to this day had brought him immense benefits. The door to the secret chamber opened silently, and Yao Kangen stepped inside. The entire room plunged into darkness, the sunstone from the fire spring suppressed until it was nearly extinguished. The two formidable old men seemed like two utterly opposite extremes. Qin Zhaogu was bathed in the light of longevity. Despite his aged features, he radiated vigorous vitality. Yao Kangen stood tall, shrouded in darkness that seemed to devour the essence of all things. He resembled a statue of a supreme god demon, radiating an overwhelming pressure as if standing within the abyss itself. Qinming sighed inwardly, the secret chamber had become as porous as a sieve. His own cultivation level was approaching the realm of the ancestor realm, yet compared to these two ancient monsters, he was still like a mere child. Why hasn't heavenly god Lu arrived yet? Qinming maintained his composure and bowed to Yao Kangan, whom he regarded as an ancestor. His gesture was not born of fear, but of reverence for an ancestor. Yao Kangan took a seat and said, "We pioneered the chaos force, yet we ourselves failed to master it. We forcibly merged it, creating a crude hybrid that was neither here nor there, less powerful than our original techniques. Young man, you are truly remarkable." Qin Zhaogu nodded, setting down his teacup. "We merely provided the spark. After all, how easy is it to truly unify all techniques? Theoretically, it should be a miracle to reach the fifth realm without the body disintegrating. Yet you are already approaching the sixth realm. It would not be an exaggeration to call you the ancestor of rebirth. Perhaps you are the one truly opening a new path. There was another sage who successfully walked this path as well," Qinming said. Yao Kangan said, "I passed through Pugong and already know of his affairs. Over 900 years ago, I met this man, he was indeed extraordinary. However, he diminished the fundamental scripture, only blending in a portion of the mysterious technique. To be precise, the technique he cultivated was more like a mutated Tathagata force. Still, he could conceive of the opposite from the great sun true form, evolving the abyss, and thereby comprehending a portion of the devouring force. He can be considered a true talent. A pity he was murdered." Qinming replied, "The ancestor blazed the trail before me. I merely followed his path and occasionally made a few discoveries. This meager achievement is nothing to speak of." He sat quietly to the side, waiting for heavenly god Lu to appear. By now, even when faced with ancestor Qin's face, which was identical to his own grandfather's, Qinming could control his emotions well. Yao Kangan said, "If you can fully traverse this path, you might just be able to suppress the entire world." Qin Zhaogu also nodded. "We merely constructed a crude framework, which is nothing. If you can continue to forge ahead and ascend to the ninth realm, you will be the true progenitor ancestor of this path." Qinming cleared away the cold tea and proceeded to brew a fresh pot himself. He was inwardly astonished. Hadn't these two been fighting to the death the moment they met? How were they now arriving together and coexisting peacefully in the same room? On the cloud-patterned stone table, tea fragrance drifted from the celadon cups. Qinming personally served the tea, showing the two men the utmost courtesy. He did not know if they intended to harvest him like a crop. Since they hadn't immediately turned on him and were still drinking the tea he brewed, perhaps there was still room for a peaceful resolution. Besides, even if a sudden crisis erupted, he feared nothing. This was his waste body, an outer demon body. He would not mind if it were discarded. With that realization, Qinming cast aside his reservations and even began asking the two men questions directly. He spoke, "The ancient sages of the Xuanhuan Dao lineage once offered me guidance, suggesting that the path ahead is arduous, that the eighth realm seems to be a heavenly chasm blocking the path ahead." Qin Zhaogu replied, "Indeed, there is truth to that. However, conventions exist to be broken. In the beginning of ancient times, who could have imagined that our ancestors, who lived by eating raw flesh and drinking blood, would one day soar through the skies and traverse the earth? Who could have foreseen that they would project their pure yang consciousness outward, wandering the vast reaches of the world in the blink of an eye?" Yao Kangan added, "It seems as if a giant mountain stands in the way, blocking the path forward. But if it can be moved, one might see the stars trailing across the vast plains and the moon surging through the great river, opening up a new world." These two old rivals found themselves in rare agreement. Qinming refilled their tea, feeling a pang of regret. They won't be fighting for a while, he thought. Yao Kangan spoke. "Young man, come with me. If you wish to bridge that heavenly chasm, I can help you." Qin Zhaogu countered, "How can you help him? He seeks power from within himself, whereas you devour external entities. If he is to go anywhere, he should come with me. I can pave his path to longevity." Instantly, both men radiated a lethal aura. The void around them collapsed completely, twisting the very light. One seemed to sit within a divine halo of light, while the other appeared to be perched at the edge of the abyss. Qinming breathed a secret sigh of relief. They aren't showing me any hostility for now. They even want to pave the path for me. But he hadn't forgotten Wei Guanshuan's words, the man who was acting Dharma King. Yao Kangan might not harvest the crop immediately, but he would definitely transplant him into his experimental ground. What good end could a test subject meet? "Seniors, there is no need to argue," Qinming said. "I can learn from both of you at the same time." Qinming coveted the complete longevity force and devouring force. Since they viewed him as a crop taking root and sprouting, he could view them as divine sheep, and shear as much wool as possible while the opportunity lasted. Hearing this, both men offered faint smiles. Come with me. Yao Kangen struck. A rift in the void tore open like a black, gaping eye, its sight chilling to the bone. From the other side, Qin Zhaogu intervened. Strands of golden glow and rippling jade light surged forward, sealing off the black hole as he sought to pull Qin Ming away with golden threads. Gentlemen, he is a disciple of our jade capital, an ancient voice announced. At that moment, a pillar of light descended upon the night mist sea, piercing into the secret chamber and enveloping Qin Ming. It shielded him from all laws and attacks, cradling him within its embrace. Simultaneously, Wei Guanxuan and Lu Mo appeared. The light seemed gentle, yet its interior was densely packed with immortal seals, arranged like an endless field of stars. It descended directly from the inverted jade capital, isolating Qin Ming from the two masters. The primordial jade void light. Yao Kangen's expression darkened with wariness. Qin Zhaogu narrowed his eyes. He realized that even after the jade capital had been severely weakened by the colossal entity, it still possessed unfathomable depths of power, capable of unleashing such a mysterious force. Lu Mo spoke up. Gentlemen, you may both help Xiao Qin pave his path and teach him together. This was the original intent behind your creation of the Chaos Force, to learn from each other's strengths, compensate for each other's weaknesses, and integrate all the techniques of the world. Do not forget your original aspiration. Yao Kangen looked at him. For someone who has delved so deeply into the black and white scripture, your yin-yang force is indeed impressive. Lu Mo waved his hand. I speak the truth, I mean nothing else by it. Qin Zhaogu finally conceded. That is acceptable. But I will be the one to take him away. Yao Kangen nodded. That's true. Otherwise, what are we? Giving away the fundamental scripture and training your jade capital's direct disciples for free. The two old rivals exchanged a look, their interests once again aligning. Lu Mo shook his head. Impossible. His stance was resolute. He would never allow anyone to take Qin Ming away. Yao Kangen said, young man, your tone is quite arrogant. Is there no room for negotiation? He even considered Heavenly God Lu a newcomer, showing just how much he relied on his own superiority. Seeing the atmosphere grow tense, Wei Guanxuan spoke up. Weren't you two fighting to the death? Has this all been a performance from the start? Qin Zhaogu replied coldly, blood debts must be settled. Yao Kangen snorted, a flash of icy killing intent crossing the depths of his eyes. Both believed the other deserved to die and had ample justification to kill. However, they also shared a tacit understanding, they both preferred to kill a certain other person. Yet, they had waited a long time, and that person had still not appeared. These ancient monsters, who had lived for ages and were already permeated with the aura of decay, were extremely dangerous. Their grievances were complex and difficult to resolve. Lu Mo said, look, Qin Ming, as a rogue cultivator, has already become the youngest great sage. His martial fortune is truly flourishing. Why do you want to alter the course of his life? What's wrong with simply passing on the teachings and letting him forge his own path? Unless, of course, you covet his body and harbor malicious intent. Qin Zhaogu scolded, you little punk, what nonsense are you spouting? He continued in a low voice, don't lump us in with those gate hunters. Even if they live a bit longer, their achievements are already fixed. Their very life essence has become a messy jumble, locking their upper limit. Though we all seek immortality, such a miserable existence is not our pursuit. Yao Kangen nodded. Taking shelter behind another's gate pollutes one's own pure true self. When they eventually awaken, who knows who will emerge? Qin Ming realized that even among those pursuing longevity, there was a hierarchy of contempt. The two powerful figures shared a similar disdain for beings like the Wu Yao. Wei Guanxuan smiled. Isn't it said that among those exploring the path to longevity, the last one standing is king? Yao Kangen shot him a glance. You old fox, acting like a bystander, are you here to laugh at this domain's failures? He paused briefly before adding, or is your lifespan running short, and you're ready to fall from grace? Wei Guanxuan shook his head. Enough, you two. Let's put those thoughts aside and get back to the matter of Qin Ming. Yao Kangen's tone turned uncompromising. The boy comes with us. He, too, had a Dao lineage to uphold. He could not allow himself to cultivate a future supreme expert for the Jade Capital. Qin Zhaogu nodded. Indeed. He cultivates our technique, not the techniques of your Jade Capital. Naturally, he must leave with us. Wei Guanxuan's voice turned heavy. He is already a hidden disciple of our Jade Capital. We will teach him the corresponding techniques later. We will never allow you to take him. Lu Mo added, the so-called path was forged by Xiao Qin himself. Even without the Silk Book technique, he could have reached this height. You should be grateful that this child is testing the techniques for you. In the future, he will be able to clear the path for you. You should know how to show gratitude. Yao Kangen felt that people who cultivated the yin-yang force always spoke so unpleasantly. In an instant, the four began to argue. When they grew too agitated, they would directly tear through space. Qinming sighed and withdrew from the danger zone. He bathed in the primordial jade void light, walked directly into the courtyard, and listened to the faint chirping of insects among the flowers and grass. Looking up at the boundless night sky, he kept wondering, was that really his grandfather? A long time later, Qinming was called back into the secret chamber. The four men gave him the choice, whether or not to leave the Jade Capital. Yao Kangen said, "You should know that the Chaos Force contains several supreme true scriptures. It's not just the two of us involved, other mysterious beings who have walked far on the path to longevity are also involved." He was trying to persuade him, revealing the true advantage. For many, this would be an irresistible temptation. After all, a single supreme true scripture was enough to make anyone's eyes turn red with envy, yet he had openly stated there were several. But Qinming remained unmoved. His primary concern was the risk of being used as an experimental subject, which would likely lead to his death. As for the essence of the Silk Book, he had already completely mastered and was cultivating it. The techniques the other party offered were naturally the complete versions of the Devouring Force and Longevity Force. But did Qinming really need more true scriptures now? He did want to cultivate the mysterious techniques of the Forbidden Domain, but the desire wasn't that strong. This was because he had already obtained the Blood Vajra ring, providing him with the strongest possible self-protection means. Furthermore, he possessed the President's Myriad Apertures illumination technique, which was also a flawless supreme technique. Whether the secret techniques contained in other true scriptures could rival the Longevity Force or Devouring Force remained to be seen. One would have to reach the very end to know for sure. What was the true essence of the Silk Book? It was primarily embodied in the word, fusion, and he had already returned to the origin, cultivating the primordial one qi. Qinming had already fully grasped the chaos force. If he wanted to fuse all techniques, he didn't necessarily need the few scriptures in the other party's hands. Therefore, he felt confident enough to refuse their invitation to travel far and take such a risk. What kind of people were these two mighty experts? They were seasoned veterans of life, their very eyelashes seeing through the void. Naturally, they saw through his intentions and knew exactly what decision he would make. This is a token. If you change your mind, you can come find me. Yao Kangen offered a piece of jade, simultaneously naming a location in the night mist world. Qinming reached out to accept it. This was a precious item, well worth studying. However, Yao Kangen withdrew his hand, looking at Wei Guanxuan. "I just remembered, you lot from Jade Capital are notorious thieves with a habit of stealing techniques. It's a rather dishonorable practice." Wei Guanxuan's face twitched, unable to refute the claim. Although such techniques had long been lost, later generations could only pinch their noses and accept the debts left by their ancestors. Yao Kangen stroked the jade with his hand, as if severing something, before finally handing it to Qinming. Qin Zhaogu also offered a token and named a location. Suddenly, Yao Kangen shot to his feet, staring at Ancestor Qin beside him. You actually did it." His expression darkened. "Last night, you intercepted my origin chi to trace my true body, didn't you?" As he spoke, Yao Kangen transformed into a black mist of light and shot into the sky. Qin Zhaogu also turned into a brilliant mist of longevity light and vanished into the depths of the night, heading far away. Clearly, their true bodies had not come to Night Prefecture. Even so, the figures these two mists had taken last night remained terrifyingly powerful and world-shaking in the great battle. In some unknown realm, their true selves had already met and were locked in a bloody struggle. Qinming finally couldn't hold back and shouted, "Senior Qin, are you the one I've been searching for?" Since their meeting, Qin Zhaogu had never acknowledged their kinship, as if he had already foreseen something. From the depths of the night sky, his voice drifted back, "Why ask? Let the memory remain beautiful in your heart." Hearing this, Qinming was overcome with sorrow and stood motionless in the small courtyard, like a wooden statue. It took him a long time to recover. Wei Guanxuan had already left, returning to the inverted Jade Capital. Lu Mo said, "There is no need to torment your own mind. All the troubles in this world are because you are not strong enough. If you reach the 9th realm, where can you not go? You could even venture into the depths of the night mist world. The strongest of all are blessed with smooth paths in all matters." Qinming nodded upon hearing this. He immediately asked old Lu to teach him the techniques of interchanging void and reality, and transforming yin into yang from the black and white scripture. In his eyes, this was a supreme, life-saving supreme technique of the Forbidden Domain. Heavenly God Lu was astonished. This kid is truly impressive. How did his mindset shift so quickly? He's already composed himself in such a short time. Under the night sky, Lu Mo patiently explained the technique. Only after Qinming nodded repeatedly, indicating his understanding and figuring out how to cultivate it, did he depart. In the small courtyard, the insects chirped softly in the night. Qinming sat still, his figure blurring and nearly vanishing from its spot. High above, his true body also swayed. I almost succeeded. He decided to return to Twin Tree Village. Cultivating these techniques here was not convenient. After sending a telepathic transmission to Meng Xinghai, Qinming departed that same night. Once these matters are settled, it will be time for me to leave. On his journey, Qinming asked Old Cloth if he knew of any places suitable for him to travel and temper himself, which could help him grow rapidly. Yet, he received no response. Qinming said, then let's rephrase. Have you found any new cloth fragments? I can help you collect them. Besides, such a place could also offer me a chance to improve. This time, Old Cloth finally reacted. You want to plunder other senior owners. There is such a place, but if you go, your chances of survival will be slim. Qinming asked, where is it? As long as you can arrange it, a fair duel, just like before, I fear nothing. Old Cloth said, deep within the night mist world. Qinming froze. He immediately realized that the deep within it spoke of was likely the core area of the night mist world itself. He truly wanted to see what that place was like. The core area might hold the key to the very nature of the night mist world. To him, this was an immense temptation, driving his desire to uncover the truth. Of course, he hadn't forgotten Old Cloth's warning, some domains must not be entered too early, or death would be the only outcome. Qinming hoped to journey there safely, just to glimpse the truth hidden in the depths of the night mist world. His thoughts churned as he traveled. I wonder, have Ancestor Qin and Yao Kengan truly departed? Will our paths ever cross again? In the blink of an eye, Qinming approached Twin Tree Village. This was the result of his low-profile return, without even using the Primordial Gold Bridge. As a grandmaster who had mastered the technique of shrinking ground to an inch at the Xuanhuan Dao lineage, he possessed a speed unimaginable to ordinary people, even when traveling on foot. Late at night, the fire spring at the village entrance glowed softly. The black and white twin trees, with the yin and yang two energies circulating between them, faintly formed a hazy Taiji diagram. Tang Yusheng was not yet asleep. She sat beneath the twin trees, chin resting in her hand, lost in thought. Her mind drifted back to years ago, imagining Qinming practicing his martial techniques here often. Suddenly, a premonition struck her. She raised her gaze and scanned the distance, spotting a figure emerging from the deep night at the village outskirts. Qinming. She called out, quickly rising to meet him. The night breeze brushed past, fluttering her robes. The silk ribbon tied around her slender waist swayed in the wind. In the soft glow of the fire spring, she looked like a fairy stepping out from the moon. Are you leaving for a long journey? Tang Yusheng asked softly. Yes, Qinming nodded. He was indeed leaving Night Prefecture. Tang Yusheng's exquisite face was flawless. Her brilliant eyes sparkled, and her every glance radiated a captivating spirit. At this moment, she was peerlessly elegant and pure, her entire being seeming to glow. Upon hearing his confirmation, a wave of disappointment and melancholy washed over her, mixed with a touch of reluctance to see him go. Finally, she stepped closer, taking the initiative to move infinitely close to his familiar figure. However, Qinming drew back. You. Tang Yusheng froze. Then, her eyes widened. With a flash, Qinming's white-haired form vanished, and his true self, with a full head of black hair, appeared in its place. He immediately explained, I loathe my white-haired appearance. Now it's better, I've regained my youth. You're leaving for a long journey, and there are things I want to say, otherwise, I'm afraid I'll never have the chance. Perhaps we'll never meet again in this lifetime, Tang Yusheng said. She was bolder than she had ever been in their past interactions. She opened her arms slightly and moved to gently embrace his familiar figure. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 737, Night Prefecture concluded, 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The firmament resembled an inverted abyss, an endless expanse of darkness without a single glimmer of light. Before Twin Tree Village, the fire spring rippled with a soft glow, like a hazy moon fallen to the mortal realm. Tang Yusheng seemed to bathe in this moonlight as she emerged from the moon palace. Her features were flawless, her black hair cascading like a waterfall. Unadorned by makeup, her snow-white, delicate skin glowed faintly. Qinming stood lost in thought, and before he knew it, she had gently embraced him. Earlier that night, he had asked Qin Zhaogu if he was the one he had been searching for. After receiving that answer, his mind had been in turmoil, far from the outward calm he displayed. This emotional turbulence caused him to react a beat too slowly to the sudden situation. A night breeze stirred, causing Tang Yusheng's dress to flutter. Her slender waist and long, straight legs accentuated her perfect figure. Her black hair billowed, carrying a faint fragrance that drifted into Qinming's nose, refreshing his spirit. Before he could react, Tang Yusheng slipped past him like an eel, gliding from his front to his back, and then, thump, she delivered a kick. With his cultivation as a supreme Grand Master, Qinming could have easily dodged the blow. In fact, even if he had stood still and taken the hit, the primordial light would have surfaced on his body to neutralize the attack and launch a powerful counterstrike. However, he suppressed his chaos force and refrained from defending, not wanting to hurt her. Tang Yusheng's delicate foot struck Qinming's backside with considerable force. She truly had wanted to say something to him just now, for she sensed that after this parting, they might not meet again for many years. Yet, Qinming stood there, stiff as a wooden post. Seeing that he hadn't dodged, nor met her with his usual sharp-tongued rebuttals, Tang Yusheng suddenly felt a wave of relief. She smoothed her hair, turned to face her old friend, and beamed a brilliant smile. "When are you leaving?" she asked, standing beneath the black and white twin trees. The fire spring's glow cast a halo of light around her, making her seem enveloped in layers of divine rings, even the tips of her hair shimmering with a crystalline luster. "In a little while," Qinming replied. Then, he took 2 steps forward and gave her a gentle hug. He felt that his earlier turmoil, standing there motionless, must have given the false impression that he was reluctant. So, after letting go, Qinming pulled her into another, tighter embrace. He believed that to actively resolve a misunderstanding, one must not wound the other person's pride. In the dead of night, amidst the profound silence, the two stood beneath the black and white twin trees, bathed in the fire spring's glow, neither speaking a word. Bai Meng, sensing something, emerged from the village. He peeked around, but upon seeing this scene, he quickly shrank back. Tang Yusheng immediately pushed Qinming away, retreated a few steps, and leaned her back against the trunk of the black tree. Bai Meng desperately wanted to say, "I didn't see anything." But as he retreated to his quarters, his backside was promptly kicked several times, by Yu Zhensheng, the old Grand Masters of Awakening Path, and even Ning Siqi, who came over to deliver a final blow. "Why am I getting beaten up again?" Bai Meng wanted to scream into the night. Beneath the black and white twin trees, Qinming leaned against the trunk of the other white tree, sitting by the fire spring and chatting with Tang Yusheng about his experiences over the past few years. In the dead of night, he recounted the magnificent and tumultuous events outside. In truth, these events spanned only a little over a year, the other 4+ years had been spent trapped in the abyss, like serving a sentence in hell. This time, Tang Yusheng had brought an extremely rare great medicine, hoping to cure Qinming's white hair, but it was clearly no longer needed. Previously, rumors had spread throughout the world that Qinming's future would wither early. Now, those rumors had long since been proven false. "I want to enter the Jade Capital," Tang Yusheng said, her beautiful eyes shimmering with a fine, flowing light as she suddenly made this decision. "You." Qinming turned his head. He knew that Tang Yusheng came from Taishu and was a descendant of the Lord of Jade Capital. Her clan had always been unwilling to ascend to the heavens, choosing instead to remain hidden on the surface. This was because the waters ran deep within the inverted Supreme Dao lineage, and it was far from as peaceful as one might imagine. Her clan knew the inside story, so they kept their distance from the vortex. Tang Yusheng's eyes shone brightly, her face showing a look of determination. "I want to become stronger." Qinming was already the youngest great sage, capable of remaining in the mortal realm for a very long time. She did not want to one day find her black hair turning silver by the time her old friend returned. She also wanted to walk through this unique great era and stand at a very high position. The Jade Capital lineage had its share of problems, but it also held a wealth of rare resources that could aid her rise. "How are the bloodline shackles within your body?" Qinming asked, wanting to help her. Back during the Supreme Blood Battle, Tang Yusheng had temporarily unlocked a set of mysterious shackles, allowing her to slay saints, a truly extraordinary feat. That power was a gift from the Lord of Jade Capital, containing extraordinary might. Yet, it was also a shackle. Unless completely torn asunder, it would forever suppress her. "I've already severed one set," Tang Yusheng said, lifting her snow-white chin as her old, arrogant demeanor returned. Qinming asked, "There's still one more, isn't there?" That was a set of secret shackles, nearly impossible to even sense. Discovering them was a stroke of pure chance, for they contained even more astonishing power. Tang Yusheng's chin, which had just been raised, lowered again as she sighed, "I can't break it." Qinming offered, "I will help you." Tang Yusheng looked completely defeated. "Even the ancestor of the earth immortals tried and failed. The shackles are fused with my very primordial essence. The slightest mistake could cause a catastrophe." The intricate shackles covered her primordial essence and spiritual consciousness. Tearing them apart completely would be an arduous task, any error could leave her crippled. It was a delicate operation, one that outsiders would find nearly impossible to intervene in. "I can do it," Qinming said. He believed that through resonance, he could connect with Tang Yusheng's spiritual domain and treat her physical body as his own. As long as she was willing to cooperate and release her conscious imprint, he could control every detail. Moreover, this wasn't a possession or a forced entry, there would be no side effects. Are you sure? Tang Yusheng asked skeptically. After all, even a 7th realm expert would find it difficult to intervene. Qinming beat his chest and declared, how can a real man say he can't? Tang Yusheng blushed and scoffed at him. Fairy sister, Earth Immortal brother, are they doing all right? Qinming asked about the Earth Immortal couple from Taishu. The two spoke softly, chatting until the shallow night arrived. Qinming was primarily asking her about the secret shackles. If he was going to do this, he would do it right. He truly wanted to see how astonishing the Lord of Jade Capital's awakened bloodline power would be. In the morning, Qinming satisfied Bai Meng's appetite by treating him to black boar meat. Hiss. I've eaten savage beasts with a faint Qilin bloodline, but brother Ming, this is. Bai Meng was stunned. He strongly suspected this was a pure-blooded Qilin. Yu Zhensheng, Tang Yusheng, Ning Siqi, and the others had eaten this meat more than once, but they truly did not know its origin. They only knew it was a treasure medicine of flesh and blood that surpassed all imagination. Qinming warned, don't speak recklessly. The karma involved is too great. This is just black boar meat. Bai Meng was extremely excited and understood the gravity of the situation. He immediately nodded and said, yes, I will never speak of this. Oh, by the way, brother Ming, I saw nothing last night. Thump. He was launched into the air, kicked away by Tang Yusheng. That day, Qinming took Tang Yusheng into the simple building beneath the black and white twin trees. The yin-yang two energies flowed here, and the Tao resonance was peaceful, making it an ideal place for secluded cultivation. Qinming said, I will first impart a true scripture to you. It can improve your constitution and enhance your innate talent. After you completely sever all your shackles, you might even be able to further elevate the bloodline gift of the Lord of Jade Capital. What scripture is it? Tang Yusheng asked. Qinming informed her, the advanced version of the life-altering scripture, Yiming True Scripture. The difficulty of this scripture was beyond imagination. Every time Qinming imparted this technique to an old friend, he had to use special techniques to assist them. Obviously, his primary goal was also to let Tang Yusheng adapt to how to resonate with him. Qinming said, do not be afraid. Even if problems arise, I have primordial qi here to maintain your best state. He began by reciting the true scripture, transmitting the technique to her first. Then, Qinming went a step further, directly examining the invisible shackles within her flesh and spirit. It's like a vast starry sky, covering the depths of her physical essence and spreading into the core area of her pure yang consciousness. Qinming studied it for a long time, his expression grave. That same day, after helping Tang Yusheng successfully circulate the life-altering true scripture, he prepared to sever the shackles. Qinming said, once we begin, there is no turning back, you must endure the discomfort. Tang Yusheng nodded. She knew better than anyone that they could not afford to give up halfway. Soon after, the yin-yang two energies began to flow here. The two of them, like yin and yang themselves, merged to form the great Tao of yin and yang. Within Tang Yusheng's body, an endless star sea seemed to emerge. Great stars rotated one by one, connected by threads that formed a sky-covering divine chain. When Qinming swung his blade, countless immortal seals appeared, densely packed. Hiss. Tang Yusheng's body swayed. Within her physical body and her pure yang consciousness, blade lights as brilliant as the morning glow appeared, simultaneously slashing at those immortal seals to tear the shackles apart. This level of precision required absolute accuracy, the slightest error would lead to severe consequences. No matter how meticulously Qinming controlled the process, she still endured a significant shock. Qinming's expression remained grave as he used the primordial one qi of returning to the origin to nourish her form and spirit. The power of my bloodline is feeding back into me. As time passed, Tang Yusheng's furrowed brows relaxed. When the shackles broke, the mysterious substance contained within them would nourish her in reverse, and her terrifying bloodline began to awaken. Qinming dared not relax. He seized the opportunity to break the restriction, for if he failed to sever all the immortal seals and erase every divine chain in one go, the shackles would ultimately restore themselves. The next day, the two had not emerged. Below ground, the yin-yang two energies were entwined. Another day passed, and the underground space grew hazy as the Tao resonance melded into one. Only after the third day did Qinming finally emerge, his steps unsteady. He left Tang Yusheng to recover and continue her secluded cultivation within the underground palace. Brother Ming, you're not doing so well, are you? You look completely drained. Bai Meng rushed over, his concern evident as he stopped right in front of Qinming. Qinming strongly considered kicking him but ultimately held back. Instead, he directly stewed white Qilin meat for a nourishing meal. Bai Meng was stunned. Brother Ming, you didn't actually become my brother-in-law, did you? He found it highly abnormal that he hadn't been kicked. People who get beaten regularly know. He had actually gained experience from being beaten, and based on various feedback, he began to analyze the situation with a confident air. Thump. Bai Meng was sent flying, soaring through the night sky before crashing toward Black White Mountain. Brother-in-law, hitting me afterward is just a cover-up. He shouted. When he returned, Yu Zhensheng took the lead, kicking his rear once again. This is too much. Bai Meng fumed. It was bad enough that Ning Siqi ran over to join in, but even that red squirrel crept over, acting like a little thief, and landed another kick on him. The talking sparrow also gave him a swipe with its claw. Xiao Bai, Yu Zhensheng said, no beating is ever truly in vain. The primordial one qi flowed within Qin Ming's body, and he soon fully recovered. He looked at Yu Zhensheng and the other old grandmasters, concluding that their most critical problem was their dwindling lifespans. Unless something unexpected happened, he would likely not see several of them by the time he returned next. If they wished to break through, they would naturally need to supplement their lifespans. Qin Ming closed his eyes and carefully pondered the sustaining world scripture. He had achieved a deep resonance with it when he slew Ancestor Kui. He had to admit, old Kui was truly extraordinary, having researched this cultivation technique to a level that was unrivaled in Night Prefecture, successfully extending his own life by half a lifetime. Qin Ming had been cultivating this cultivation technique for a long time and had his own unique understanding of it. Combining it with Kui Zheng's experience, his comprehension of the sustaining world scripture undoubtedly reached a new level of enlightenment. Seniors, if this secret chapter of the sustaining world scripture can be fully mastered, the most critical problem of lifespan will be easily resolved. Soon, everyone present was stunned. Qin Ming had actually slain the Kui clan's ancestor. Was this the true value of a supreme grandmaster? Dead wood blooming in spring, old trees sprouting new shoots. Qin Ming personally transcribed the text, recording all his insights and every single detail in full. Even though each person's comprehension would differ, he believed that with him blazing the trail, others would achieve extraordinary results when they cultivated it. Even if it was difficult to extend one's life by half a lifetime, adding 100 or so years to one's lifespan should be no problem. Let Uncle Meng and Master Li cultivate it too. Qin Ming didn't know if this would be effective for 8th realm beings, but he planned to give it to old Lu to try out later. Besides, the concept of inner sage, outer demon, also embodied the coexistence of yin and yang, which should be useful for heavenly god Lu. Along with Yi Ming, life-altering, and the azure lotus of the turbid world, Qin Ming prepared to give them all away. At the same time, he was also waiting for the true scripture from the Jade Capital. That day, Qin Ming left the Black White Mountain region to visit his sworn brothers, who were still studying the ruins left behind after the great battle between the two powerful experts. Of course, Qin Ming walked among them in his outer demon body. In a desolate area of the mountains and forests where all life had vanished, Qin Ming met the Dharma King, Niu Wuwei, and the others. Meng Jiu, in particular, had been lingering on various battlefields for a long time, unwilling to leave, constantly exploring the longevity force. Years ago, she had been brutally taught a lesson by an ancient monster, nearly dying in the process. This had left her with an indelible psychological scar and an obsession with the longevity force. At this moment, she was cultivating the most rudimentary form of the Silk Book, trying to verify it. Qin Ming's expression stiffened slightly as he said, Sister Meng, you should understand by now that even though my technique contains the longevity force, it's not the complete version, and it's very difficult to comprehend. On the battlefield, Meng Jiu stood with a graceful, slender figure, her purple hair cascading down to her waist. She stubbornly retorted, it's fine. I'm only studying it roughly to counter the longevity force, not to master it myself. After careful consideration, Qin Ming said, how about this? I'll teach you the latest version of the Silk Book. And if you're willing, I can also grant you the flawless, primordial chaos seed, to you. She had come to Night Prefecture twice, proving her loyalty as a sworn sister. Especially the last time, when they had confirmed his death yet still rushed to his side. This touched Qin Ming deeply, and he vowed to remember it. If any of you want to learn, I can teach you as well, Qin Ming said, looking at the others. Meng Ziyu's expression stiffened, her beautiful eyes flashing with a dangerous glint. The version you taught me before was a crude draft with serious flaws. The Dharma King spoke up, everyone in Night Prefecture knows that the Silk Book itself isn't that precious. The key is who is cultivating it. Meng Jiu gritted her teeth. Sixth brother, I suddenly feel an itch in my hands. I think I need to spar with you. Qin Ming immediately explained, Sister Meng, what I taught you was the original text personally written by Qin Zhaogu and Yao Kangan. It wasn't a crude draft, it was the original version, which might even hold the deepest secrets. He would rather die than admit he had fooled her with a crude version back then. Then, he turned to the Dharma King. Second brother, you know everything. Why didn't you warn eldest sister back then? Sure enough, Meng Jiu fixed her gaze on Qiancheng again. Finally, Qinming admitted frankly that the so-called chaos force was far from being perfected. He had been groping in the dark, constantly making mistakes through trial and error, a dangerous process that still required further improvement. Upon hearing this, the others sighed in unison. This was truly a scripture that no ordinary person could cultivate. Actually, I've also done some research on the cry of the ancestral insect and life-altering, Qinming said. If you're interested, I can share my insights. The group froze in astonishment. Back then, they had all obtained these two scriptural interpretations, but they were only fragmentary methods. Could sixth brother have obtained a more complete version? In the time that followed, Zhou Tian, Niu Wuwei, and the others were all shaken. Their expressions turned grave as they began to listen intently to his explanation of the true scripture. The Dharma King's expression also changed. He held the life-altering true scripture in extremely high regard. After all, he was the one who had organized the expedition to explore it back in the day. Meng Jiu abandoned her silk book and focused on studying the cry of the ancestral insect. After Qin Ming's death, there was no sense of his influence fading, a common occurrence when a powerful figure departs. This was entirely because he had gone to great lengths to reward the others. Much later, Meng Jiu, the Dharma King, and the others let out a long sigh of relief, feeling they had gained immensely. Niu Wuwei asked, "Sixth brother, I get the feeling you're rushing around settling affairs like someone about to leave on a long journey. Are you planning to travel alone?" Qin Ming sighed. A man caught in a game has no choice in his actions. He then earnestly asked Meng Jiu about the mysterious family that cultivated longevity force, where they were located and what their origins were. After all, the Dream Insect clan had dealt with them. Meng Jiu informed him, they are indeed like rogue cultivators, their main base cannot be found. Then, her expression turned grave. They might have come from deeper within the Night Mist world. As for their origin, it might be related to the mysterious figurine pit guarded by the Rebirth Figurine Organization. Qinming listened intently, then asked several more questions about the devouring force. With their business in Night Prefecture concluded, Meng Jiu, Niu Wuwei, and the others prepared to set out on their return journey. Sixth brother, you and eldest sister seem to have known each other for a long time. What's the deal with the Tiger Cauldron inscription? And how did you get the white tiger body? As they were about to depart, Zhou Tian seized the opportunity to ask. Qinming desperately wanted to say that Meng Jiu had once called him, Master. Looking back to those days, I was also. He couldn't bring himself to say any more. Because Meng Jiu's purple eyes were emitting a divine light. Not only was she staring at him with a warning glare, but she had also used the ancestors' pressure to seal Zhou Tian's mouth, preventing fourth brother from asking any further questions. MMPH. Zhou Tian discovered that even his consciousness domain had been gagged, leaving him utterly helpless. He quietly performed a divination and found an ominous sign, continuing to pry would likely result in a brutal beating. Sixth brother, you've really outdone yourself. He could only communicate with Qinming through his eyes. The next day, Meng Jiu, Zhou Tian, and Niu Wuwei left Night Prefecture. Heavenly Halberd accompanied them, preparing to return to the Xuanhuan Dao lineage. Qinming followed them to the edge of Night Prefecture, watching as they disappeared into the pitch-black night. The Dharma King remained behind, seeking the other half of his innate wisdom. Qinming left his footprints in many places across Night Prefecture. He traveled to Kunling and revisited Shan Academy. Now, all the familiar faces had long since graduated and departed. However, he spotted a few familiar faces. Sister Ya, for instance, who had welcomed him and Xiao Wu into the academy years ago, had actually stayed on as a faculty member. Sister Ya, why have you taken human form? Otherwise, I was going to introduce you to a fellow clansman. Master Wu is definitely a paragon of your kind. Qinming teased. Sister Ya, thick-skinned as ever, replied, Junior brother Qin, please help me play matchmaker. I've admired Master Wu for a long time. Her network was vast. After a few calls, a large group soon gathered for a reunion. Qinming saw several familiar faces, including Xin Yudao, the prodigy who had once swept through 81 cities and caused a sensation. Brother Qin. Xin Yudao exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. He and Qinming had always been on excellent terms. Brother Xin. That day, Gan Jincheng, Zhang Ruoli, and Luo Lianqing also appeared. Even Jin Shang, the golden sheep who had been pulling a cart in Kunling City to refine his heart in the mortal world, came. After a brief gathering, Qinming departed into the night. He returned to Twin Tree Village and found the old grandmasters in seclusion, studying the secret chapter of the sustaining world scripture. Tang Yusheng remained in the underground palace, still absorbing the gift of the Lord of Jade Capital's bloodline power. Late at night, Qinming unfurled the exotic metal cloth, staring intently at the various patterns it bore: a fragmented blazing sun, a shattered divine moon, a severed giant claw, and vast expanses of black mist. In a daze, these images seemed to come alive. The old cloth spoke of its own accord. "Why do you keep staring at me?" Qinming asked. "You're so powerful. Just who was the one who forged you?" After a long silence, the old cloth replied, "I do not know." Qinming stroked the tattered cloth with his hand. "It seems there's also a portion of the pattern from the 36 heavens of the night void." The old cloth fell silent. Qinming said, "Many landmarks are depicted, yet it lacks one of the night mist world's most famous features, the fire spring." The old cloth spoke. "I will send you into the depths of the night mist world." Qinming was speechless. One wrong word and this tattered cloth wants to send me away. However, he wasn't afraid. He wanted to witness the essence and truth of the night mist world's deepest reaches in another way. Therefore, he replied defiantly, "Arrange it, then." "Are you serious?" the old cloth asked. "Yes." Qinming nodded. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 738, A Journey Far Away, 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The exotic metal cloth glowed faintly. The fragmented sun and shattered moon upon its surface seemed on the verge of revival, and a dense black mist immediately began to spread. Qinming asked, "What are you doing?" The old cloth replied, "Since you are about to sever yourself from the mortal world, I am searching the nearby local area for a suitable successor." Qinming's expression darkened. "You already consider me the former owner. This really is a piece of trash," he thought. "It's trying to abscond with the funds and is already looking for its next employer." The old cloth retorted, "Success depends on preparation. Failure is the result of a lack of it." It then asked, "Are you ready? I can send you to your death at any moment." Qinming corrected, "My true body will not intervene, nor will my crippled body get involved. I only wish to use resonance to scout the path and glimpse the truth." The exotic metal cloth ceased its glow. After a moment of silence, it muttered, "Troublesome. Does it have emotions?" Qinming immediately initiated resonance to probe the old cloth. The next instant, he let out a muffled groan. He saw a sun rising within the black mist, or more accurately, it was projected into his mind, nearly incinerating his pure yang consciousness. Qinming immediately activated his primordial qi, materializing the heaven-opening axe and striking out with a thunderous blow, obliterating the blinding divine halo within the light of the spirit. Old cloth's level was too high. Even attempting resonance in its presence was forbidden. If any other grandmaster had tried this, their spiritual domain would have been burned through with a gaping hole. Qinming ceased his probing and said, "So it seems possible. I'll prepare for a few days, then you can help me make the arrangements." Old cloth replied, "It remains extremely dangerous, but..." "Very well. Given your consistently miraculous performance, I will slightly step over the red line this time." Qinming wondered if it would eventually break the line, if he did this a few more times. Suddenly, Lumo's voice transmitted to him, "Enter Black White Mountain." Though the voice echoed in the ears of Qinming's crippled body, his true body had already rushed over. He guessed that the scripture for the hidden disciples had likely arrived. Deep in the mountains, black mist swirled, and fire springs bubbled. Beside a bamboo forest carved from red agate, old Lu sat cross-legged, waiting for his arrival. "You are truly cautious," Lumo said, looking up at Qinming's true body, then peering through the mist at the crippled body outside the mountain. Qinming smiled. "I learned it from you. One becomes black by being close to ink. From now on, you are a primordial guardian," Lumo informed him via a telepathic transmission. This would be Qinming's new identity. Qinming was taken aback. "Wasn't I supposed to be a Jade Capital's hidden disciple?" Lumo, his hair as white as snow, his face ruddy and his eyes deep, said, "Your fame has spread far and wide. Does that sound like someone who could be hidden?" Qinming also sat down on the ground. "Isn't this the result of the Jade Capital envoy's high-profile actions?" He frowned. "What does this mean? Did they want me to draw the world's attention while the Jade Capital cultivates its true hidden disciples?" Qinming was quite dissatisfied. "Are they using me as a decoy? Was this their plan all along?" Lumo waved his hand. "Don't get worked up, there will be plenty of benefits." As he spoke, he produced a book, an absurdly thick volume measuring over 1.5 feet in depth. "You've already made a name for yourself as Great Sage Zhengguang in the outside world. It's impossible to hide it now," Lumo explained. This was why Qin was no longer suitable to be a hidden disciple. Of course, if Qin were willing to bind himself deeply to the Jade Capital, that would be another matter. But Heavenly God Lu had made it clear from the very beginning, Qin was to be dispatched upon request but not summoned by decree. He was not to be overly constrained. In truth, the higher-ups were eager for him to enter the inverted Jade Capital. If he did, he could one day contend for the position of Dao Master. Lu Mo knew, however, that Qin had no desire to go there. It's better not to, Lu Mo said. You should hold the reins to your own future. Lu Mo himself harbored a deep dread of that place. He had no desire to be scrutinized by the ancient monsters there, whose lifespans were all but spent. Even he did not know the true depth of the 10-color ice cave within the Jade Capital. Lu Mo continued, at present, several ancient monsters are very optimistic about a newcomer. Is he in Jade Capital City? Qin asked. Lu Mo shook his head. He is in the Primordial land. The Jade Capital Dao lineage had not always been here, it had journeyed from a distant place. Many supreme Dao lineages had undergone such great migrations, this was no isolated case. The so-called Primordial land was the original site where the Jade Capital had been established. The higher-ups had already decided, within a few months at the earliest, or 2 to 3 years at the latest, the Jade Capital would cross over to the Primordial land. Lu Mo informed him, as a Primordial Guardian, your status is truly high. You will become that newcomer's martial uncle. This was all because Qin performance had far exceeded expectations. Even though he was still very young, he had been assigned this, old man's, identity ahead of schedule. He was left speechless upon hearing this. Lu Mo said, actually, it's just a title in name only. You'll have even more freedom than Jade Capitals, hidden disciples, there are practically no constraints. He handed the scripture, a thick tome measuring 1.5 feet, to Qin. As Qin took it, he felt its considerable weight. Lu Mo smiled. The Jade Capital's reputation precedes it. Their scriptures are indeed quite numerous. What reputation? Even Yao Kangen had called the Jade Capital a great thief with a habit of stealing techniques. Qin discovered that this was a compilation. He flipped through it quickly, his expression turning strange. What the hell? He saw a vast number of familiar scriptural meanings. For example, the ultimate golden body scripture. But he had already mastered it. Next was the heaven-transmitted Jade Tome. The name sounded imposing, but the content was also familiar. Upon closer inspection, it was exactly the subduing heart scripture. Then, he saw the 9 Heavens manual. The more Qin read, the more helpless he felt. He had cultivated many of these scriptures before. He even spotted a fragment of the Yingshu True Scripture, scripture of waxing and waning from the Xuanhuan Dao lineage. Here in Jade Capital territory, it was simply called the Yingshu Scripture. Qin could only imagine what those ancient monsters had done in the distant past. No primordial jade void light. He frowned. That was supposed to be the supreme technique of the Jade Capital, one that even Qin Zhaogu and Yao Kangen were wary of. Lu Mo said, I asked. The old monster Wei Guanshuan just grinned and said that everything is contained within this scriptural meaning. If you master it thoroughly, the supreme technique will reveal itself. Qin immediately tried to resonate with it, only to find it completely empty. Not a single trace of emotion had been left behind. The Jade Capital was known as a great thief, and they were extremely cautious about such matters. Lu Mo sighed. Be grateful. When I first joined the Jade Capital, I didn't even get to read a true scripture. I was sent straight to guard the divine mine. Unless one was a hidden disciple or a primordial guardian, they would never get the chance to see this collection. Of course, old Lu had the chance to flip through it this time. Isn't this just making things difficult? To comprehend the strongest technique, the primordial jade void light, one has to cultivate so many cultivation techniques. This is practically a lifelong quest. Qin sighed, but he felt no resentment. His fundamental scripture required technique fusion. Afterward, Qin took out several books, including Inner Sage, Outer Demon, Yiming, Life-Altering, Turbid World, Pure Lotus, and the secret chapter of the Sustaining World scripture. You really reaped an astonishing haul while out adventuring, kid. Lu Mo, a man who knew true value, immediately changed expression and began studying them earnestly. A long while later, he finally looked up and asked Qin how his comprehension of the mutual transformation between the virtual and the real, as well as the interplay of yin and yang, was progressing. Qin nodded. It's fine. I've already mastered it. However, he still needed to consolidate his understanding and reach the realm of perfection. Even someone as powerful as Lu Mo was stunned, momentarily lost in thought. Then, he came to terms with it. If Qin hadn't shown such transcendent talent, how could he have approached the Ancestral Realm before even turning 30? Qin sent a secret voice transmission, asking old Lu about the secrets of the Jade Capital. Lu Mo's expression turned grave. You once saw the Jade Capital flowing outward from a window-like tunnel, forming an overhanging supreme Dao lineage, didn't you? Such a profound secret was unknown even to him, he had never heard of it before. Lumo sighed. When I was young, I heard the elders say that the night mist world is incomprehensible and must be revered. It seems this truth still holds for 8 realm beings. He couldn't calm his heart, which was churning with emotion. He had some theories, but they were impossible to verify, and it was unwise to voice such uncertainties. He looked up at the night sky, his expression profoundly grave. Finally, Lumo sighed again. All things have a lifespan. The supreme strongest will die, and even the supreme Tao lineages continuously decline and perish. Nothing lasts forever. His emotions were a tangled mess. Qinming emerged from the great mountains, shifting rapidly between the realms of the tangible and the intangible. With a single thought, he could swap places between his true body and his useless body. Through his study of yin and yang, as well as the interplay between the real and the illusory, Qinming discovered that he could combine these concepts with the resonance technique. The true body and the crippled body naturally share a profound connection, making them the ideal medium for resonance. He pondered, if I temporarily refine a few incarnations, could they serve as relay points? I could resonate across thousands of mountains and rivers, across boundless domains. If he could achieve this, the safety margin for his temporary explorations into the depths of the night mist would be drastically improved. Next, Qinming began his experiments. This has great potential. Qinming discovered that the stronger the medium, the better the effect. To this end, he spared no effort in passing through the ancient mist gate to seek suitable vessels. After many years, he returned to the barbarian immortal realm. This world was incredibly strange, all living beings were reverting to a primitive state. Yet, they still possessed terrifying strength. Deep within this realm, one could see grandmasters who ate raw meat and drank blood, as well as ancestor-level beings that had become beast-like. Rumor had it that as one ventured deeper, they could even encounter Earth immortal-level monsters that had completely reverted to their ancestral forms, fully embracing their bestial instincts. Outsiders could not stay here for long, or they too would degenerate. Qinming strongly suspected that this was the result of some ancient, terrifyingly powerful expert's malevolence, whose horrific influence persisted to this day. For the beings here, if they could regain their sanity for even a moment, they would likely choose death for liberation over such a muddled existence. Imagine a 6th realm expert living like a beast, suddenly finding themselves with a brood of animal offspring, how horrifying would that be? Even so, I have no right to make choices for them. In the end, Qinming still could not bring himself to hunt. Ultimately, he could only scavenge corpses, searching for bodies that had just passed away. 2 days later, Qinming deployed these temporary incarnations, his transfer mediums, across Night Prefecture to test his technique. The results are excellent. To facilitate this, his crippled body also appeared in various locations for calibration. During this process, he took the opportunity to visit some old acquaintances. For instance, he visited the palm-sized bright pig, who had been living in seclusion beside Black White Mountain for years, hoping to establish his divine roots there. You've become a supreme grandmaster. The pig exclaimed in shock. Clearly, his isolated cultivation had left him completely unaware of recent events in the outside world. As Qinming traveled, occasionally revealing his presence, the Kui family reluctantly sent him an invitation. So, 7th Uncle Kui has taken charge. Qinming felt a hint of surprise when he arrived at their doorstep that day. Seeing Qinming, Kui Hao felt both relief and sorrow. The Kui family had fallen into complete ruin, beset by internal strife and external threats. From ancestors to grandmasters, and even peak 4th realm experts, not a single one remained except for himself, all the others had been slaughtered. With 7th uncle at the helm, we can turn a new page. After a long conversation with Kui Hao, Qinming also met with Kui Changyi, a close friend who had once sought him out at Black White Mountain. Finally, he tore through the void and departed. When he had first tested his powers, he had visited the Immortal Path and the great ancestral courts of the Esoteric Path. Now, returning to the Pure Land and the Immortal Land, his reception was incomparably grander than when Lu Zizai had first brought him to their gates. Helian Zhaoyu remained silent. Facing his old rival again, his fighting spirit had completely vanished. His cousin, Helian Yaoqing, was far more welcoming, sharing wine and reminiscing about the past with Qinming. In truth, Qinming had hoped to see Cao Qianzhou's true body, but his wish went unfulfilled. Old Cao was nowhere to be found. Luo Yao left with Zhang Ran during her last visit. Has she joined the Xuanhuan Dao lineage? In the night sky, an incarnation of Qinming had descended into the clouds, arriving above Xiao Wu's ancestral home, the 4th Forbidden Zone. He wanted to see the place where he had once fallen from the sky and discover the true origin of those water-vat-thick hairs. There was a piece of land suspended high in the night sky. He had been struck down from it by the Kui family's old woman, nearly being shattered to pieces in the fall. Hiss! Qinming gasped as he sensed the truth. This could be described as a vast, boundless creature, or perhaps a phenomenon. It originated from the night void. These water-vat-thick hairs pierced through the void from the depths of the night void, thrusting into this layer of clouds and creating the fourth forbidden zone below. The night void is too deep. Arriving here, Qinming thought of Xiaowu in the fourth forbidden zone, and naturally thought of the woman from the divine temple, Changxi. Speaking of which, she could be considered Xiaowu's aunt, and she had treated Qinming well back then. 2 days later, Qinming found her. Changxi was already an ancestor with profound cultivation. I never expected you to grow so quickly. Changxi, in white robes as pure as snow and transcending the mundane, was very pleased to reunite. Qinming visited her in person with his outer demon body and presented her with 2 true scriptures, thanking her for allowing him to study the improved silk book technique in the divine temple all those years ago. That same day, Qinming also met several old acquaintances, Master Wu, Tang Jin, and Ling Yu. Additionally, there was Qi Qianshan, the hidden disciple whom Tang Jin had highly valued back then. Qi Qianshan was a person with innate wisdom, and he was indeed quite extraordinary. Qinming wondered if he might possess the other half of the Dharma King's innate wisdom. But that was none of his business, and he had no intention of getting involved. Master Wu exclaimed in astonishment, "Qinming, I always knew you would soar to the skies, but I never imagined you would pierce through the heavens themselves." He had never anticipated that Qinming, at merely 28 years of age, would stand on equal footing with an ancestor. Tang Jin's expression was a complex mix of emotions. This was the man she had once given up on, the one who would have otherwise become her junior brother. Qinming, however, harbored no resentment over the past. He had once learned mystical techniques from them, such as the heavenly light seed immortal lotus and the god-slaying whip, which had deepened his understanding of the three-path advancement. To think I was once one of the people who fought against Brother Qin. Ling Yu declared, his voice brimming with pride. The next day, Qinming used a temporary incarnation to travel to the otherworld to test his powers. He arrived at a cat-person village, where he reunited with Sanhua, Haibai, and Li Hua. After all these years, they were all unharmed, having escaped the fallout of the past. I've finally fulfilled my promise from back then, he thought. Using his incarnation, Qinming imparted his teachings to them and left behind several spiritual objects before drifting away into the distance. His aura. It's so familiar, one of them whispered. He feels just like the big brother from all those years ago. The 3 of them stared at the figure vanishing into the night, unable to shake the feeling for a long time. That evening, Qinming, the crippled body, ascended to the 6th Imperial Ancestral Court to seek an audience with Lu Yu. The 6th Imperial Ancestor was Lu Zizai's grandfather, who had already mastered the 7 Imperial Force and stepped into the 7th realm. His voice was gentle as he spoke, "You quietly entered the depths of the night mist world and yet managed to build such a formidable reputation. Truly remarkable." Qinming answered his various questions earnestly and asked about Lu Zizai's whereabouts. 3 years ago, he sent a letter saying all was well, and he also asked about your cultivation. Lu Yu informed him privately, revealing Lu Zizai's movements. However, after so many years, it was impossible for Lu Zizai to remain in one place. He had likely set out on another journey. Learning that Lu Zizai had not completely lost contact, Qinming felt slightly relieved. Perhaps on this journey, he would be able to reunite with senior brother Lu. I have met most of the people I needed to see. It is time for me to travel far. Before returning to Twin Tree Village, Qinming recalled Wen Rui, who was traveling outside. He took a portion of his purified sacred demonic essences, separating a few tendrils to bestow upon the young man, and simultaneously passed down the latest version of the chaos force. Furthermore, Qinming had prepared various mystical techniques for him. "Uncle, are you?" Wen Rui was very sensitive and felt that his uncle was about to leave again. "Xiao Qin, are you leaving?" Yu Zhensheng also sent a secret transmission. Qinming nodded and said, "Senior, you might as well stay in Twin Tree Village. It's also a good way to help me cover up for a while, misleading the outside world into thinking I am still here." Yu Zhensheng nodded and said, "All right, no problem." If nothing unexpected happened, his path of the Ancestor Realm was now promising. Perhaps the next time Qinming returned, they could still meet, and he would not have to pass away prematurely. Qinming wanted to wait for Tang Yusheng to emerge from that simple underground building before departing. As a result, she never appeared. Qinming resonated with her and knew she had already emerged from seclusion, but was simply unwilling to face the pain of parting. He fell silent, not forcing her, and prepared to set out. At that moment, Bai Meng sighed. "Alas, my status in the village has plummeted. I've already fallen behind the birds and the rodents." Ning Siqi remarked, "Brother Bai, you're wonderful in every way, except for when you open your mouth. Late that night, Qinming set out on his journey. The people closest to him stood at the village entrance, watching him leave. Meng Xinghai, Master Li, and others had all come to see him off. Tang Yusheng rushed to the ground, staring blankly at his gradually receding figure. Qinming turned and gave her a brilliant smile, waving vigorously. At the edge of the night, Lumo appeared. He swept Qinming up and personally escorted him away, severing any lingering karmic ties and ensuring no unpredictable pursuers were on his trail. They passed through numerous mysterious mist gates, many of which were secret paths unknown to others, until they had completely left the Jade Capital territory. Lumo confirmed that no one was following them. "Senior, take care." Qinming bid him farewell. "You brat, don't cause too much trouble out there," Lumo warned. The Night Mist world held both bloody cruelty and dazzling splendor. In regions with a high density of supreme Dao lineages, countless legends were unfolding. The record for the youngest ancestor has been broken. In a few more years, the Great Sage Gathering will begin. They call it the Great Sage Gathering, but there might be beings among them with the potential of a Dao Venerable or a Buddha Lord. Some ancient monsters have gone mad, joining forces to charge into the depths of the Night Mist world. Is someone trying to fish for decayed heavenly immortals? Without a doubt, in lands where Dao lineages stood tall, many thrilling and perilous events were occurring every moment. By contrast, the Jade Capital was too remote to feel such an atmosphere. However, it was about to migrate, returning to the land of splendor. Deep within the Night Mist world, the president's silver hair fluttered in the wind as she bathed in the blood of longevity. Her myriad apertures resonated in unison as she advanced step by step toward the mysterious land of life and death. Over the past few years, her cultivation base had been steadily recovering, surging rapidly upward. Far away, in an unknown land, Yang roared at the sky. His eyes suddenly intertwined with Dao imprints, becoming dazzling and awe-inspiring, as he whispered, "Yeet Night Fire Spring." After Qinming set off alone, he spoke with Old Cloth. "You said that this time, you could bend the rules and back me up." Old Cloth fell silent for a moment before uttering 3 words, "Just this once." "All right," Qinming said. "I choose to explore the core zone of the Night Mist world and witness the truth there. Don't worry, I won't put you in a difficult position. I'll send my incarnation and investigate through resonance." "Impossible." Old Cloth refused. Qinming felt it was a rare opportunity. Since Old Cloth was willing to intervene personally, why not play it big? But in the end, he couldn't go through with it. "Why?" Old Cloth's response was extremely blunt, "You will die a violent death." Qinming's expression changed drastically. He wasn't going there in person, could even resonance trigger such a fatal calamity? He asked, "What about exploring the deeper parts of the Night Mist world?" "Acceptable." This time, Old Cloth agreed. "Give me a moment to prepare." Qinming's spirits immediately lifted. Shortly after, he was struck with utter shock as he saw a bright moon hanging high in the sky. Where had he arrived? Was this still the Night Mist world he knew? Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 739, Meeting Chang'e on the Moon, 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The vast sky was silent. A lone moon hung high, its clear radiance piercing through 1,000 layers of the sea of mist, revealing the outlines of countless mountains and ravines. Qinming was certain, that was no moon insect. With his extraordinary vision, he could see the jagged mountain ranges upon the silver orb. At this moment, he stood in the 9 heavens. The night mist churned beneath his feet, and the great earth below was faintly visible, crisscrossed by winding earth veins and fire springs. The vanished moon had reappeared. Where exactly had the exotic metal cloth transported him? Qinming glanced back. At the edge of the boundless void, there was another version of himself, or more accurately, the temporary clone he had prepared in advance. In that distant realm, a mist gate stood, connecting to this unknown territory. He rose slowly, like a scene from myth come to life, mimicking Chang'e's ascent to the moon. His expression filled with excitement, Qinming charged toward the Tiān star. Old Cloth had kept his word. He was indeed paving the path for Qinming, granting him extreme speed. Like a streak of shimmering light, Qinming pierced through the 9 heavens, heading straight for the bright moon at the zenith of the sky. Qinming's outer demon body remained standing within the mist gate, an immense distance away. He could clearly sense the uniqueness of this realm. Spiritual substance was incredibly dense, and brilliant fire springs converged into rivers upon the surface. Yet, he also detected a dangerous qi mechanism. The Dao resonance was unevenly distributed. Some areas surged like a vast ocean, with towering waves crashing against the firmament, while others remained as calm as a mirror, as if locked by a formation. Is this the depths of the night mist world? Qinming possessed multiple perspectives. His outer demon body gazed across the surface, while the clones he had temporarily created were evenly distributed in the void leading to the moon. These served as relay points, allowing him to achieve resonance. If he wished, he could even perform a virtual real mutual transformation and a yin-yang exchange, truly projecting his outer demon body here. Qinming had left multiple clones along his leap to the moon. Finally, one of his clones drew close to the bright moon. He gazed up at the vast firmament. 10,000 miles of silver radiance spilt forth, the boundless heavens filled with the great light. Having been plunged in deep darkness for so long, the sudden sight of the bright moon, just as described in the history books, made Qinming's mind wander, as if he were lost in a dream. One of his clones had successfully leapt to the moon and had already arrived. At this moment, he turned back and gazed into the distance at the path he had traveled. The great earth was pitch black, completely invisible now. The moon hung lonely beyond the heavens, a mere spark of firefly light. Standing here, he could see no other stars. Qinming felt like a single speck of dust, suspended above an endless abyss. This sight involuntarily brought to mind the ancient records of the universe's deep space. Facing such profound silence and emptiness alone, a sense of awe welled up within him. Even a supreme Grand Master, drifting in this vast expanse, was so insignificant as to be unworthy of mention. Still, no sun. Qinming realized the gravity of the situation. How could this giant moon be emitting light? His last clone passed through the soft, clear radiance and descended onto the surface of Tiān lunar. He looked up, wondering if the halo of light in the sky was formed by some kind of formation. Qinming set foot on the lunar surface. There was no sign of life here, only a landscape of gray soil and shattered rock, cratered ground, and overlapping pale white mountains. It was a place of utter desolation and death. Soon, he made a discovery. On a rock, he saw carved characters. Though he could not read them, he resonated with a powerful emotion, endless despair. Subsequently, he discovered Tao imprints left behind by a powerful cultivator. He could comprehend their meaning without needing to form a resonance. This old one has cultivated bitterly for 1,000 years, crossed the boundless great earth, hoping to ascend to the moon, only to arrive in this barren wasteland. As Qinming explored, he saw many inscriptions left by his predecessors. Where is Xuanhuan Palace of Vast Cold? Jade Moon is nowhere to be seen. Clearly, experts from past generations had ascended to this place. The deeper he ventured, the more frequently he found inscriptions from the ancients. He felt the place failed to live up to its reputation. Qinming shared their sentiment. Let alone finding Xuanhuan Palace of Vast Cold and Chang'e, there wasn't even a single tile or piece of rubble. This place was deathly silent, filling one's heart with utter disappointment. Suddenly, he spotted a massive rock radiating an aura of terror. Danger, flee. It was a warning hastily left by a predecessor, as if they had witnessed the most horrific of things. Ah! On another rock, clear finger marks were etched, and the ancient cultivator's shrill, agonized scream seemed to pierce through time. Qinming shuddered and retreated, taking flight to survey his surroundings. When he realized this was merely a clone and that he was descending through resonance, his taut nerves finally relaxed. Was the Tiān star, the moon, a dead, silent wasteland, or did it harbor some terrifying secret? In the distance, at the end of the earth, before the mist gate, Qinming's outer demon body vanished. He left behind a final clone and withdrew himself. Only a single mist gate connects these two realms, he thought. I refuse to believe that the anomalies on the Tiān star could reach across the void and affect me here. Even so, Qinming stowed his outer demon body within the old cloth's internal space, leaving only a sliver of a gap to maintain the resonance. On the lunar surface, Qinming discovered shattered spiritual treasures and scattered bloodstains. This was a goddamn crime scene. Some of the blood had not even clotted yet. Soon after, he came upon a mountain of bones, a dense, sprawling pile containing every species imaginable. From insect shells to beast bones, and even human skulls, the sight was utterly horrifying. Qinming realized that he had previously appeared in a desolate zone. This area was an active zone, and it was far from devoid of life. He even spotted a creature that seemed to have died only moments ago, its corpse dumped here. As the real moon this blood-soaked. Qinming's head throbbed with a dull ache, and goosebumps erupted across his skin. This was nothing like the beautiful place he had imagined, the Tiān star of myths and legends. So bloody and brutal, how could this place be considered sacred? It was nothing short of a den for some peerless demon, teeming with unknown dangers and horrors. Could it be that when the sun vanished and the night mist shrouded the great earth, a calamity also struck the moon? While Qinming was alarmed, a strong desire to explore also arose within him. Perhaps he could uncover a glimpse of the truth here. Suddenly, a snow-white hand materialized from nowhere, expanding at blinding speed. With a dull thud, it seized Qinming. He couldn't even dodge. Even though this was a temporary clone he had hastily refined, it still possessed Grandmaster-level strength. Yet now, he found himself unable to break free, instantly becoming a captive. The slender, jade-like hand clutched its prey and plunged into the subterranean world. Qin Ming's heart chilled. Could it be that after Chang'e met her end, she transformed into some nameless creature? As the black mist swirled, the faint, agonized roars of a giant dragon reached his ears, accompanied by the clanking of heavy iron chains. Then, he heard the strange chirping of insects. What kind of place is this? It seems to be a prison for many powerful species. Qin Ming's expression grew grave. Even if Chang'e isn't on the Tiān star, there should be other immortal spirits, right? Could they all have mutated after the calamity struck? Is the master of this place hunting for blood food? With a thunderous crash, the snow-white hand gripping him tore through the mist zone. Deep underground, contrary to Qin Ming's expectations of darkness and gloom, the place was surprisingly brilliant, filled with numerous buildings and rooms that were impeccably clean. In an instant, Qin Ming's senses were sealed, and his vision went black. Anyone else would have been completely cut off from the outside world, no different from falling into a coma. Qin Ming was also affected, his state of resonance was interrupted, and he temporarily lost contact with the clone. However, the vessel remained intact and undamaged. Moments later, his mind focused intensely, and he successfully re-established resonance with this clone. He found himself in a brightly lit room, bound by a top-tier Dao ceiling ring that prevented him from unleashing his Grandmaster-level power. Furthermore, his hands and feet were shackled, and he was strapped to a cold iron bed. A green-skinned monster with a bald human body was looking down at him. Then, other creatures appeared, a demon with a pung's head and a true silver-haired human, and they began examining his body. Strange. How has a body that should have been dead revived? No matter. Inject the substance and observe the reaction. Excellent. A special specimen is the best material. Though Qin Ming's cultivation was sealed, he understood their language through resonance. What kind of hellish place was this? He found the situation absurd. Had he become nothing more than a test subject? The more he listened, the more it seemed so. Then, Qin Ming felt a small vial of blue liquid injected into his flesh. Simultaneously, someone pried his mouth open and forced a red pill down his throat. Hiss. Though he was in a resonant state and not in his true body, Qin Ming could still feel every minute change in the flesh with agonizing clarity. The pain was unbearable. The blue liquid surged through his veins, spreading throughout his body. Blue mist rose from his limbs and bones, and he watched in horror as his flesh began to partially dissolve. Damn it! Qin Ming felt he was purely here to suffer. What kind of hellish star soil was this? Calling it a mythical land was completely off, yet calling it a disaster-stricken wasteland didn't fit either. The place was clean and orderly, yet utterly hostile to outsiders. The red pill he had swallowed began to erupt with crimson light, spreading across his entire body. In that instant, the vitality of his flesh and blood surged violently. The body's long-dormant potential, which should have been completely exhausted, suddenly boiled over, fighting back against the destructive power of the blue liquid. The two medicines clashing within him were so powerful and violent that even Qin Ming could barely endure it. Boom! His right arm exploded. Next, his spine snapped. Soon after, crimson clouds erupted like fire, setting his body ablaze. Meanwhile, the rest of his flesh rapidly dissolved, losing 20% of its mass to the blue potion's corrosive power. So weak. This isn't a specimen hunted from the surface. He flew up here on his own, so theoretically, he should be powerful. How strange. His head is nearly burned through, yet his mental consciousness is still active, steady, and completely unaffected. The monsters were observing a crystal that seemed to contain Qin Ming's spiritual domain fluctuations, their expressions filled with astonishment. Extract his consciousness for separate study. Then, someone began the process of soul extraction, bringing out a transparent container to seal away the target's spirit. What? I can't extract it. His divine soul is in an abnormal state, now tangible, now illusory, now here, now gone. It's as if he isn't even present, yet it keeps flickering. Something's wrong. An unknown expert might be invading. One monster warned. Enemy attack. The silver-haired human roared. An old monster burst into the room. With golden wings on his back, he rained down light like a descending immortal, his presence as awe-inspiring as a god. A blinding halo pulsed around him as he teleported instantly to their side. He locked down the void, sealing off the area completely. In an instant, he extinguished the flames on Qin Ming's body and halted the further melting of his flesh. He possesses a familiar trait, the old monster remarked, his eyes sharp. He's likely a creature that escaped from another experimental field. His mental state is indeed abnormal. He personally attempted to extract Qin Ming's consciousness, but failed. Finally, he shattered Qinming's clone and used a mysterious spirit sealing jar to collect the divine soul. It's still no use. His consciousness is dissipating, about to vanish completely. No, his true soul is far away, yet it's inexplicably shining here. Quick, ask the Lord to emerge from seclusion. The elder's voice rose to a shout by the end. Qinming felt a pang of regret. With his clone destroyed, the pain had ceased, but he could no longer observe from this vantage point, making further resonance impossible. However, in the void beyond the moon, there remained a relay point, one of the 8 clones he had left behind. Qinming hung high in the night mist, looking down at the glowing full moon below. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. He saw countless snow-white, slender hands erupt from the surface, reaching into the night sky like a 1,000-hand guanyin or a 1,000-armed demon awakening. Finally, he felt a terrifying consciousness stir deep beneath the moon's surface. Just as those snow-white hands reached toward him, a woman materialized out of thin air just outside the moon, radiating a shocking aura. She wore a palace robe, her long hair fluttering without wind. Her beauty was breathtaking, and she cradled a rabbit in her arms. Her robes billowed as she closed the distance with such blinding speed that Qinming barely had time to react before she was already upon him. Qinming's mind immediately jumped to Chang'e. After all, arriving at a place that resembled the moon, she was the first person he thought of, especially since the woman's temperament and attire were so strikingly similar. Before the woman in the palace robe could even make a move, the white rabbit in her arms opened its mouth, and Qinming's physical body began to dissolve. It was trying to suck out his soul light. Is this dark Chang'e and the hell rabbit? They're out to kill me the moment they see me. Qinming cursed inwardly as another one of his clones was destroyed. Simultaneously, he revived in his nearest clone, gazing out at the void beyond the moon. In an instant, a chill ran down his spine. He felt a presence behind him. He immediately realized what had happened. The woman's speed surpassed all imagination, moving as fast as his own spark of thought. The moment he had even considered the possibility, she was already there. This wasn't an afterimage, it was a physical body moving in the flesh. Qinming could feel the white rabbit licking its lips, its gaze fixed on him once again. But this time, the woman struck personally. With a flick of her slender finger, a spiritual chain composed of mysterious symbols pierced the void in an instant, sinking into Qinming's flesh. Tracing my origin. Qinming's heart hammered against his ribs. He sensed the gravity of the situation. The woman in the palace robe paid no mind to this clone. She had already realized it was merely a useless body of flesh and blood, one he could discard at any moment. Behind the mist gate, within the internal space of the old cloth, Qinming decisively severed his connection to all his clones and fled as far away as possible. He even sealed himself off completely within the old cloth space. For a short time, he wouldn't have to worry about his consciousness dissipating. Originally, he had planned to discard his clones one by one, using the process to carefully observe her. But now, he didn't dare. The woman was simply too terrifying. He had no choice but to prepare for the worst. Qinming spoke up. Old cloth, what's the situation outside? You said you'd back me up this time. Can you take down that dark Chang'e? At that moment, the exotic metal cloth's emotions fluctuated again. It felt a strong urge to open the space and throw him out. I'm already pushing the limit just by keeping you safe. You still want me to fight? The old cloth felt that this kid was frantically testing its boundaries. Would he be even more outrageous next time? Within its internal space, the mirror of Dao Rime appeared, reflecting a scene from afar. The stunningly beautiful woman in a palace robe, cradling a white rabbit, was retracing their path. Each time, she vanished from her spot and reappeared right before Qinming's clones. Her speed was truly terrifying. The spiritual chain, forged from runes, had pierced through all of Qinming's clones, only halting abruptly as it neared the mist gate. At that moment, Old Cloth intervened, sealing the gate early and erasing all traces. Otherwise, the woman in the palace robe would have pursued them from that earth realm all the way to the rear of the mist gate. Is she really that terrifying? Qinming asked, his voice trembling. This time, he had only entered the depths of the night mist world, far from its core. If his true body had gone, he would have died instantly, not surviving even half a day. Absurd. Of course, this also had to do with the earth realm he had chosen. After all, a place with such a bright moon hanging high was bound to have serious problems. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had 8 of his incarnations wiped out in an instant. Can I go out now? Qinming asked. Yes, Lao Bu replied affirmatively. Qinming let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, she wasn't so monstrously powerful that she could cross realms to kill him. Old Cloth reminded him that this time, he had helped Qinming sever all causes and cut all effects. This would not be repeated. That wasn't the real Tiān star, was it? Qinming asked. What do you think? Old Cloth countered. Qinming said, definitely not. The woman's consciousness was clear, and her physical body was pure. It was impossible for her to be some fallen Chang'e who had since mutated. As for the rabbit, it was completely white-furred but black-hearted. What kind of pet was that? It was absolutely a terrifying great demon lord. The ancient era had long since passed. Even if Chang'e had existed, she should have died of old age. No one could live that long. Unless the Jade Palace, a supreme Dao lineage, existed, and the current figure was a new generation of Chang'e. However, Qinming believed the most likely possibility was that the woman was an imposter. Old Cloth had informed him that it wasn't the real moon at all, but a meteorite refined by a powerful cultivator and then hoisted into the night sky. Qinming's expression turned grave as he said, "Is she deliberately attracting people to use them as experimental subjects?" In the night world, there was no sun, nor were there stars. If one were to discover a divine moon hanging high in the darkness, it would naturally be a tremendous temptation. Clearly, the woman in the palace dress was extremely powerful, otherwise, she would never dare to act so ostentatiously. An enemy hidden in the darkness was certainly dangerous, but a being who dared to light up the lunar wheel was by no means ordinary, and possibly even more terrifying. Qinming temporarily abandoned the idea of venturing deeper into the night mist world. Even if it was filled with rare treasures and creation, it could no longer tempt him. He asked, "Are we still in the deeper parts of the night mist world?" After all, they had only passed through a single mist gate. Old Cloth replied, "No." Clearly, the ancient mist gate it had opened could span multiple Earth realms, enabling ultra-long distance teleportation. Qinming sat cross-legged in this mountain range, rich in spiritual substance, converting sacred demonic essence and breathing in the primordial qi. After several days, the white hair on his outer demon body vanished, turning completely black. The primordial qi can nourish the form and spirit, it wasn't just a saying. As for his true body, it had naturally become even more powerful. He wandered through these endless mountains, attempting to break through to the outside. This is no ordinary place. There are numerous high-grade fire springs, many spiritual objects, and monsters roaming freely. The area was not lacking in high-grade fire springs, and the entire mountain range was brimming with boundless, magnificent vitality. Qinming suspected that such a place likely harbored ancestor-level monsters. Therefore, he dared not be careless, exploring cautiously as he moved forward. The next day, he discovered a vast expanse of white in the distance, as if a river of stars had fallen from the sky. Qinming was stunned. Dense heavenly light was pouring from the night veil, descending into the vast mountain range. Those who walked the path of awakening were naturally hypersensitive to heavenly light. Qinming knew well that it wasn't just their cultivation system that could absorb heavenly light, some demons also refined various domineering substances from beyond the heavens. Furthermore, certain divine herbs and immortal medicines required heavenly light to nourish them. For instance, the starlight silver lotus that Qinming had seized from the 8th realm expert, Taoist Hong, in the place of Yiming life-altering, needed to absorb various substances from beyond the heavens to grow. Qinming traveled silently, cautiously approaching. The area was thick with the scent of blood, as numerous aberrant creatures fought viciously. There were also a few humanoid beings among them. Their eyes were bloodshot with killing intent as they charged toward a valley. It was precisely there that a vast amount of heavenly light was raining down. "Let's join forces to break the formation," a silver-haired old wolf shouted. He was a late Grand Master. "Agreed. We'll break the restriction first." In the night sky, a 5-foot-long great centipede with a pair of golden wings circled like lightning, trailing golden radiance. Other monsters remained silent, their hostility toward one another palpable. A bird-headed monster spoke, "Stop fighting. If something's changed in the valley, we'll all be caught off guard." Let's enter the valley first." An old human man nodded in agreement. Qinming was astonished. These creatures were all powerful, seasoned experts who had endured countless battles. Moreover, ancestor figures seemed to be lurking nearby. Qinming's senses were keen, and he had already detected the presence. He guessed that such an old monster would likely struggle to maintain its condition and wouldn't dare to intervene immediately. Boom. An hour later, a massive crash echoed through the air. The valley's restriction was torn asunder, and a swarm of monsters charged inside. Qinming followed close behind, slipping in with them. Someone beat us to it. The expressions of many aberrants shifted. An old golden toad was already inside the valley. At the valley's center, a Bodhi tree radiated intense spiritual energy, its 7-colored glow piercing the heavens. The old golden toad sat motionless on a prayer mat beneath the tree, absorbing the dense heavenly light. Its eyes, like rubies, bulged from its head. Its wide mouth was stretched into a grin, clutching a round copper coin with a square hole. Its skin was warty and rough, and the Tiān pattern carved into its crown had formed the Tiān origin essence. Its entire body was golden, shimmering with a brilliant luster. Yet, at this moment, the most captivating sight was the Bodhi tree itself. Torrents of heavenly light poured down, absorbed by the ancient tree. Deep within the lush, emerald-green foliage, a Bodhi seed was about to ripen. It was extraordinary, born with 7 orifices that connected it to heaven and earth, channeling Tao resonance and absorbing heavenly light. It's actually a 7-orifice exquisite sacred Bodhi. The silver-haired old wolf exclaimed in shock. The other aberrants also stared with wide eyes, their faces filled with disbelief. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 740, A Cluster of Supreme Tao Lineages, 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Deep within the emerald foliage of the valley, the 7-orifice exquisite sacred Bodhi seemed to breathe, drawing in the heavenly light and radiating layers of iridescent auspicious haze. The thick night mist was stained in a kaleidoscope of colors as colorful clouds drifted upward, transforming the entire valley into a dreamlike vision. The eyes of every creature that had stumbled into this place burned with a fervent glow. They all knew that the value of this treasure was immeasurable. The 7-orifice exquisite sacred Bodhi was a divine marvel. It could purify the mind, leaving it clear and untainted by mortal dust, and it provided an extraordinary boost to those seeking the path of enlightenment. If ground into powder and added to the brewing of pills, it could drastically increase the success rate of alchemy. Under normal circumstances, however, no one would do such a thing. That would only happen when refining special, priceless pills that were notoriously difficult to create. Anyone willing to grind the 7-orifice exquisite sacred Bodhi into powder was bound to be a ruthless individual. A priceless treasure. It is also known as the myriad medicine catalyst, a human expert whispered. The atmosphere in the valley instantly grew tense. Nearby vegetation was pulverized by invisible killing intent, and both the exotic beasts and the humans stood on high alert, ready to clash at a moment's notice. Kill that golden toad first. He seems to be approaching the great Grandmaster realm. Wait. The sacred Bodhi isn't fully ripe yet. Some feared that a great battle would destroy the Bodhi treasure tree. That 5-foot-long flying centipede is a major threat. We should deal with it first. Those not of our kind are bound to harbor different intentions. We are all of the human race, we should join forces against the enemy. The experts present maintained a safe distance from one another while rapidly exchanging messages in secret. In an instant, numerous small factions formed, each already plotting their targets. Many played the odds, joining multiple groups at once. Eventually, there were more small factions in the valley than there were individual experts. Qinming used his resonance technique to eavesdrop on these groups. The information he intercepted was a chaotic mess. Some individuals were allies in one faction, yet when they joined another, they were ordered to hunt down their former comrades. Even the old golden toad, who sat motionless beneath the Bodhi tree, had been recruited by 4 different groups. Qinming remained hidden, his presence concealed by the exotic metal cloth, silently observing the scene. In the night sky, heavenly light poured down like a cascading river of stars, turning the darkness into day. Finally, a magnificent 7-colored divine radiance erupted from the Bodhi tree. The apertures on the Bodhi seed, resembling the 7 orifices of the human body, now connected with heaven and earth, channeling the Tao resonance and absorbing the heavenly light. It had completely matured. Attack. Kill. In an instant, the valley erupted in a kaleidoscope of light. A multitude of secret techniques burst forth, heavenly fire roared across the sky, 5-colored sword light soared upward, and the mountains and rivers seal crashed down. Every powerhouse launched an attack, and every individual became a target. When the number of small factions exceeded the number of experts present, the so-called alliances lost all meaning. Everyone became a target. The formation enveloping the valley shattered completely. Then, a great mountain melted, scorched into magma by a fire crow with glowing wings. Wielding a torrential divine fire, it ravaged the area, incinerating an opponent into a skeletal husk. A green-haired elephant's body swelled, growing as large as a small mountain. It trumpeted to the heavens, thrusting its massive trunk into the night sky. With a powerful coil, it ensnared the fire crow Grandmaster and then exerted its strength, causing him to burst. Feathers stained with the Grandmaster's blood drifted down from the night sky. An expert at the 8th heaven of the Grandmaster realm. Nearby exotic beasts were filled with wariness and scrambled to stay out of the way. The green-haired elephant's trunk pierced the void, extending toward the sacred Bodhi. With a clang, a dazzling golden spear thrust forward, nearly piercing the elephant's nostril and blocking it from plucking the myriad medicine catalyst. With a thunderous boom, the green-haired elephant unleashed heaven-mimicking earth manifesting technique, instantly growing taller than a mountain. It stomped forward with a giant foot that seemed to prop up the heavens. This drew the collective ire of the crowd, and everyone nearby attacked him. It had to be said that the green-haired elephant was incredibly powerful. Dao imprints intertwined beneath his feet. He was not clumsy at all, but instead fast as lightning, crushing a grandmaster in the void with a single stomp. Then, with a swing of his trunk, the green-haired elephant's attack, comparable to a heavenly blade, erupted with a blinding light, cleaving a rapidly growing monstrous bird in two. He was in a savage frenzy, slaying grandmasters one after another. Suddenly, the green-haired elephant's body stiffened, turning a bruised blue-black. He had been bitten by the flying centipede. His massive frame shrank violently, and large patches of his flesh and blood began to dissolve. Even his divine soul grew dim, beginning to extinguish. The green-haired elephant let out a mournful cry, collapsed in the valley, and died in an instant. At the same time, 2 grandmasters fell before the old golden toad. Though the valley was vast, it couldn't contain the sheer number of experts. In a blood battle on such ground, no one had a choice but to fight with everything they had. Anyone who held back would face a gruesome death the next moment. A porcupine demon roared at the sky, launching the long, metallic sheened quills all over its body like spears, shooting them forward. His opponent let out a muffled groan as he was pinned to the valley floor, dripping with blood. Kill the golden toad first. His cultivation is profound, nearly at the great grandmaster realm. Someone shouted. Moments later, the old golden toad, its body shimmering golden, its head engraved with the Tiān pattern, was besieged. Blood splattered across the valley floor as it fled, gravely wounded. So, it turns out you are nothing but a rabble. I worried for nothing. Be gone, all of you. A golden beetle, the size of a calf, hovered in the night sky, its wings vibrating at a high frequency, creating a deafening roar as it looked down from above. He was a great grandmaster, and he had finally decided to unleash his true power. The faces of the aberrants and humans present paled, and they instinctively backed away. This old one is close to the 6th realm. When I become an ancestor in the future, I will not forget to reward you. The golden beetle released a wave of pressure. He held back from killing them, partly because he wanted to recruit these experts as his subordinates in the future, and partly because he could not sustain a prolonged blood battle. Even with his extraordinary fortune, he could only enter the fray for a short time. Like a golden sun shining in the night sky, the golden beetle landed on the Bodhi treasure tree after his show of force, with no one daring to obstruct him. He was satisfied. As he opened his mouth, a golden radiance swirled around, and he plucked the sacred Bodhi, which was surging with 7-colored light, intending to claim it for himself. Are there truly no powerful experts? To let a dead insect succeed. A thunderous boom echoed in the void. A massive trunk covered in green scales tore through space, instantly reaching into the canopy of the Bodhi treasure tree. It arrived late but acted first, snatching the sacred Bodhi away. Gasps erupted as the onlookers saw a giant elephant standing in the void. Green chi steamed from its body, which was covered in dragon scales, giving it a fierce and ferocious appearance. A green-haired elephant. It has already evolved into a dragon scale elephant, and it's a great grandmaster. The one who just died was a puppet he had crafted. After landing his blow, the dragon scale elephant turned to flee. The golden beetle's killing intent surged. He beat his wings and gave chase. A creature born for the skies, having reached the great grandmaster realm, possessed speed that was naturally astounding. In an instant, he cut off the dragon scale elephant's escape. The elephant's trumpeting and the beetle's wingbeats echoed through the mountain range, deafeningly loud. The forest exploded, and cliffs crumbled. The clash between the 2 great grandmasters was earth-shattering. Though massive, the dragon scale elephant was far from clumsy. It changed direction with blinding speed in the void, feinting and striking, nearly crushing the golden beetle with its Dao imprint-etched giant foot. Suddenly, the 2 masters broke apart and slowly descended toward the valley, both bleeding and gasping for breath. We can't fight anymore. They were great grandmasters, but in this era of chaotic Dao resonance, their situation was precarious. They dared not fight to the death. Who among you is willing to assist me? The dragon scale elephant asked. The golden beetle also spoke. Whoever helps this old one will be richly rewarded in the future. The experts present exchanged strange glances, none immediately declaring their allegiance. They were all waiting for an opportunity. The 2 great grandmasters could not sustain a prolonged battle. If they were struck by the backlash of the turbulent Dao resonance, the sacred Bodhi might end up in someone else's hands. Attack! The dragon scale elephant fought with savage fury, charging toward the grandmasters in the valley. Very well. The golden beetle declared, making the same choice. They were determined to slaughter the grandmasters first, fearing that if they were weakened later, they would fall prey to the same desperation that drove a tiger to be bullied by a dog when fallen on the plains. We'll fight to the death. Everyone, join forces. The silver old wolf roared. We are all at the late Grandmaster stage, how much weaker could we be than them? Let's take down the great Grandmasters together. A bloody melee erupted. Even the great Grandmasters couldn't completely crush their opponents, mainly because they dared not go all out. The Grandmasters in the valley had no choice but to fight desperately. The silver old wolf, drenched in blood, died on the spot, trampled to death by the dragon scale elephant. The flying centipede was torn in two by the golden beetle, its soul light utterly destroyed. In the end, only 4 beings remained on the battlefield: the dragon scale elephant, the golden beetle, the golden toad, and the human elder. The treasure-abundant Duobao mountain range truly lives up to its name, the human elder sighed. The 7-orifice exquisite sacred Bodhi has only just begun to ripen, and yet its aura alone has drawn several great grandmasters here in such a short time. Indeed, the golden toad said. This old one thought the prize was practically secured, having guarded the treasure tree for 2 years. Yet you all still managed to find your way here. The dragon scale elephant and the golden beetle both wore grim expressions. They had already fought a major battle earlier. If they continued to fight now, the consequences would be dire. By now, they were already suffering the backlash of the Tao resonance, their bodies trembling slightly as blood streamed from their 7 orifices. I, the dragon-scaled elephant, give up on the sacred Bodhi. I'm withdrawing, the dragon-scaled elephant declared, placing the myriad medicine catalyst on the ground. Though filled with reluctance, it refused to die. Fellow Taoist, it is a bit too late for that, the human elder said, drawing his blade. A brilliant sword light instantly shot into the sky. Wisps of an ancestor's aura emanated from his body. He had already set 1 foot into the ancestor realm. If not for the harsh environment, he would have long been a true 6th realm expert. Clearly, he intended to kill the elephant to silence it, refusing to let a single living creature escape. If you two help me, you can survive, the old golden toad said, actually releasing a wisp of an ancestor's chi mechanism. As it spoke, golden radiance erupted from its body, and sword light burst from its warty skin, resembling a volley of 10,000 swords. It engaged in a blood battle with the human elder, revealing an utterly terrifying level of cultivation. You old toad. The human elder's pupils constricted. He had naturally heard of this demon and knew the experts of the Duobao mountain range well, but he never expected the opponent's cultivation to be no weaker than his own. The two fought fiercely, destroying everything in their path as nearby mountain peaks exploded one after another. The golden beetle and dragon scale elephant turned to flee, but the golden toad spoke, if you run, you will die instantly. As it spoke, it opened its wide mouth and spat out the round bronze coin with a square hole. The human elder felt a jolt of terror. He gripped his gleaming longsword, fighting to resist, but his body refused to obey, freezing where he stood. More precisely, his soul had been imprisoned, torn from his physical form. In a flash, the elder's soul light was drawn into the square hole of the bronze coin, unable to break free. With a sickening thud, his physical body was crushed to pieces by the golden toad's foot. The human elder roared in agony, but his struggles were futile. The golden toad flicked out its tongue like a flying sword, piercing the bronze coin's square hole and shattering the elder's soul light. Watching from the shadows, Qinming was astonished. Earlier, even he had failed to gauge the old golden toad's true depth. Only after the bronze coin left its body did he see its true cultivation. This was a genuine ancestor, and it had been concealing its power until this very moment. The bronze coin was a marvelous treasure, no simple object. It was entwined with yin-yang qi, capable of pinning down human souls. The dragon scale elephant and golden beetle fell silent, trembling with fear. They had never imagined that the old golden toad, the guardian of the Bodhi treasure tree, would emerge as the ultimate victor. The two of you will come with this old one, the golden toad commanded, its body glowing with a radiant light, its tone utterly irresistible. All right. The dragon scale elephant and golden beetle agreed, their voices tight with reluctant submission. They immediately set to work, following orders to swiftly clean the battlefield and erase all traces of their presence. The 3 demons took flight, their departure churning the night mist that clung to the mountains. Qinming glanced at the Bodhi treasure tree and saw it rapidly withering. He instantly realized that the old golden toad had used a secret technique to forcibly ripen the sacred Bodhi, causing the treasure tree to be drained of its life force. If it had been nurtured for another 1,000 years or so, perhaps a 9-aperture Bodhi would have appeared. But the old golden toad knew it couldn't wait that long, so it chose to maximize its immediate gains. Qinming silently trailed the 3 demons. Eventually, they entered the depths of the endless mountains. The golden toad halted before a vast, shimmering lake, deactivated the restriction, and descended into the water mansion beneath the surface. After a long while, a white turtle arrived from the distance. Ancient and weathered, it stood upright like a human, leaning on a cane. It was a formidable being of the ancestor realm. With a gesture, it opened the lake's immortal's cave. The old golden toad immediately came out to greet its guest. Then, it shrank until it was no larger than a palm, transforming into a spiritual object. It held the yin-yang soul-fixing bronze coin in its mouth as it settled into the white turtle's hand. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly. I thought the wolf ancestor would be drawn here. The white turtle was highly satisfied. He had managed to harvest the 7-orifice exquisite sacred Bodhi without even needing to lift a finger. The dragon scale elephant and the golden beetle immediately knelt, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. They never imagined that the golden toad was merely a treasure, and its master was the infamously fierce white turtle. This demon clan ancestor was a ruthless figure who had dared to slaughter entire cities in the past. The world believed he had long since passed away, yet his blood essence remained remarkably vigorous. They could only sigh in awe, truly a long-lived species. Huh, there's a new change. The white turtle's eyes flickered with a strange light as he examined the coin in the golden toad's mouth, his emotions fluctuating violently. Qin Ming, observing in secret, immediately resonated with these feelings. 2 years have passed, and through the dust exhaustion light birth, this coin's spiritual power has surged. Could it be a sacred treasure mentioned in the history books? Perhaps the Sustaining World Organization came to the Duobao mountain range back then specifically to find it. That must be it. They probably missed out on the treasure back then. Once this yin-yang soul-fixing bronze coin absorbs all the spiritual essence from the golden toad and restores its true form, it might be even more precious than the sacred Bodhi. The cave dwelling sealed shut, and the white turtle vanished. Qin Ming could only sense these emotional fluctuations, but it was enough. He was deeply surprised. That bronze coin might be even more important than the myriad medicine catalyst. The Sustaining World Organization was a supreme Tao lineage. It was they who had discovered the 10,000 dragons carrying tomb, back then, intending to excavate the great tomb of the Supreme Strongest. So, I really have returned to a safe area from the deeper parts of the Night Mist world. Could I be close to the Sustaining World Organization? His idea of close was probably a distance of several million miles. Otherwise, the various aberrants in the Duobao mountain range would have known about it. Currently, only the white turtle, at the Ancestor Realm, knew of the Supreme Tao lineages in the more distant Earth realms. Did the Sustaining World Organization miss out on the treasure? Could they have excavated some other incredible great tomb, only to overlook the yin-yang soul-fixing bronze coin? Qin Ming did not attack the water mansion. Instead, he quietly departed, finding an aberrant in the distance to refine into a clone. He left it behind to maintain a constant resonance. He felt this white turtle was a bit of a trickster. Mainly because the commotion earlier had been quite large, and he didn't know if other powerful cultivators were spying. He wanted to observe first. The mountains were home to isolated and aberrant creatures, making them a poor place for communication. Qin Ming decided to head toward a more bustling area to determine his exact location. The Duobao mountain range was truly vast and boundless. It took Qin Ming 2 full days to finally emerge from the primeval wilderness. Of course, this was partly because he had refrained from using the primordial golden bridge or shrinking ground to an inch. He dared not draw too much attention to himself and had carefully observed the mountain's monsters as he made his way out. He had already spotted a few other cultivators exploring the area and estimated he would completely clear the towering peaks in another half-day. Soon after, Qin Ming came upon a frenzied netherfire rhinoceros. Its body was as white as jade, yet it erupted with black flames that were causing heavy casualties among a group of human cultivators. The two leading the group, a man and a woman, were not weak, both were in the 4th realm, yet they were struggling to hold their ground. Before long, the red-haired young man was sent flying by the rhinoceros's charge. Half his body was a bloody mess, entangled in the netherfire's dark flames. Brother! The woman cried out in anguish. A red tear-shaped mole marked the corner of her right eye. She rushed to his aid, her treasure vase erupting with immortal light to block the white rhinoceros. But the beast was already at the late stage of the 4th realm. Its ferocious aura lit up the night sky, and she was powerless to stop it. Qin Ming leapt into the fray, and after a fierce battle, he finally slew the white rhinoceros, gasping for breath. Thank you, fellow Taoist, for saving our lives. The brother and sister were overwhelmed with gratitude. Only 5 of their party had survived, and they supported each other as they stepped forward to pay their respects. Both siblings were in the mid-stage 4th realm, and in their early 20s. Among their peers, they were undoubtedly rare geniuses. Their refined manner of speaking suggested they hailed from a prominent clan. The young man introduced himself as Zhang Cheng, and the woman beside him was his sister, Zhang Ziwei. Zhang Cheng was quite handsome, with fiery red hair, sword-shaped eyebrows, and eyes that shone like stars. Zhang Ziwei was a true beauty. The red tear-shaped mole at the corner of her right eye added a unique charm to her appearance. When she was still, she seemed ethereal and compassionate. When she smiled, she exuded a captivating allure that could bewitch the heart. Thank you, our benefactor, Zhang Ziwei said after composing herself. She repeatedly invited their savior to Fenggalan City outside the mountain, promising to host them with the utmost hospitality. Qinming followed them toward the exit of the great mountain. Even before they reached the end of their journey, he already knew what kind of place this was. Qinming didn't even have to ask. The siblings were incredibly talkative, their emotions running high after their narrow escape. A region teeming with supreme Dao lineages. Qinming was astonished. The surrounding Earth realm was home to numerous great powers, sustaining world organizations, cultivation civilizations, the Yuanshu dojo, the myriad spirits sect, and more. This vast land was incomparably magnificent. Come to think of it, my name differs by only one character from that of Zhang Ziyi of the Longevity Dojo. Zhang Ziwei's fiery red hair fluttered as she smiled brilliantly, the red mole at the corner of her eye glowing faintly. She chattered incessantly, her mouth never stopping as they walked. Zhang Ziyi. Qinming repeated the name. He immediately felt a resonance. This was the youngest ancestor in the world, a mere 32 years old. Zhang Ziwei said, in a few years, the great sage gathering will begin. I really want to attend and witness the peerless brilliance of those heavenly prides. Qinming hadn't known such a grand gathering even existed. He had little interest in it right now, his only desire was to break through to the ancestor realm as quickly as possible. Fenglin City was a grand and majestic place, its permanent residents being primarily humans and members of the elven race, with giant dragons occasionally sighted. You saw Qin Mao emerge from deep within the great mountain. In the Zhang family residence, an elder's face hardened with a stern expression. Qin Mo. Zhang Ziwei corrected him earnestly. We must investigate this carefully, the elder said in a low, grave voice. He is our savior, Zhang Ziwei argued. Would doing this not be repaying kindness with enmity? The elder's expression remained utterly serious. This involves the supreme Dao lineage and a monumental creation. We cannot afford any mistakes. Besides, we are only conducting a minor verification. But, is this truly appropriate? Zhang Ziwei hesitated. Zhang Cheng nodded solemnly. I believe the matter is too important. Even if he saved our lives, we must set that aside for now. Well. Alright, then, Zhang Ziwei agreed. The elder looked at the siblings and said, the secret within the mountain is astonishing. If we can uncover it, you will both be able to attend the great sage gathering. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel.